Well, Jake, we are a couple days removed from a very eventful and surprising Royal Rumble, and the most memorable aspect of the follow-up had to be the crowd reception for Jey Uso. There's a lot of developments later on, and we'll talk about a lot of interesting dynamics. Charlotte getting booed. Did she want to get booed? Was she trying to turn the crowd in her favor? Did they really think that would work, given the videos they aired for her in the lead up, and her being her, Charlotte being Charlotte, and Rhea Ripley being her opponent? So we have that as a factor. We got Seth Rollins trying to justify what he did. Does that work? What does it mean that they're writing Roman out? And then CM Punk qualify, all kinds of stuff. So tons of developments on tonight's show, but that opening with Jey Uso was memorable. We could be cynical after watching wrestling for a long time and seeing a lot of false tears and manufactured emotions in order to try to draw money and sell tickets and draw ratings. I'm buying that Jey Uso was really moved. I'm buying those were genuine words. I don't think he went backstage and said, did I convince people about something I really don't care about? Like, that felt like the type of crowd reaction that I don't think any wrestler, no matter how much they see what they do as a business and almost a con for the fans, like the most cynical of, could not be genuinely moved by how excited the fans were to see one of the biggest underdog wins and surprising unexpected wins. If WWE was looking for validation, if critics of Jey getting that win were to be I can't put it this way. I can't imagine a scene that would do more to convince people who thought it was a mistake for Jey to win to at least reconsider or recalibrate how big of a mistake it was. So, Jake, your thoughts on what we saw with Jey. What do you think of my framing of it? Oh, you're muted, Jake. That's my gimmick, not yours.
Yeah. if you were critical of the Jey Uso win on Saturday, I think you have to think about, well, clearly, I'm in the minority here. like you see these crowd reactions week after week after week, and then tonight, they're demanding an encore after he already goes through his multi-minute, crowd hype entrance and everything else. Like, I think you just have to acknowledge that, hey, this is working, whether or not I enjoy it personally or not. And I think I was a bit surprised by the number of people who seemingly were so vehemently against the idea. I mean, I've always personally found Rumble matches that attempt to make a new star, whether it's a swing and a miss or a swing and a home run, are the most fun to me. And especially when it's a major underdog victory in an unexpected way, where I think it was one of the better Rumbles coming in, where I didn't know where they were going. I thought there was a lot of plausible options. I thought they had created a lot of story coming into that event where it really did feel like it was up for grabs. And so to have a big underdog get the win, to set up, a number of other potential feuds in the process heading into the Elimination Chamber show, I think WWE's in a pretty good place. I mean, they almost have an embarrassment of riches now at the top of the card, and they're really able to show that off.
Embarrassment of riches is right. And it was an embarrassment of riches before Jey got this unexpected win. I mean, I always say that we have a smart listenership, smart viewership of our show, in the sense that the way we approach this isn't who's your favorite wrestler and let's rally behind a certain wrestler and let's rally behind a certain company. We're not raw like partisans for any wrestler, any company. And I think people who watch and listen to what we do have their favorites. They have their favorite company. They have their favorite wrestlers, but they look at wrestling through the eye of what's the business strategy for the decisions that are made. And we often say, we can, and you can go back and watch what we said. We entertained Jey winning. And then I'd go, but it's fun to speculate. It's a sort of a mental exercise, but it's not going to happen. We know better. And this showed we don't know better. We'll know better most of the time, but you always have to have that asterisk that they can surprise you. And it wouldn't have been as big of a surprise if it didn't seem like it was already a very tough decision between Punk and Roman and Cena and you can even add Drew and Seth and others to that. So what they did with this is, you can say, well, I don't know that Jey and Gunther, and we're going to get into the exchange with Gunther and Jey in a minute, because I have a lot to say about that. But we can say, well, Jey and Gunther, if that is a match, it seems like that's what they're going to do. Is the match? It's not as good as other matches for Gunther, which Gunther covered in his promo, but we have to see what they have planned for Roman, what they have planned for Punk, what the story they tell with Cena before we fully evaluate what they lost out on, because they might have gone a different direction than we thought. But what they do with these other stars who we thought were favorites to win might be good enough that we go, oh, now I see why they were willing to gamble and kind of just go with Jey as this underdog story. So we have to see it play out, I think, before we can fully evaluate what happened. Tonight was a great start, and I thought the Gunther promo took things to the next level for me in that I thought Gunther, and I'll just transition to that. I thought Gunther made me care more about that match than I thought I could care about a rematch where Gunther decisively beat him just a couple of weeks ago. Jake, your thoughts on anything I just said there?
Yeah, I think the Saturday night's main event, the decisive loss for Jey Uso made the underdog win at the Royal Rumble seem even more far-fetched. And then they pulled the trigger on that at the Rumble. And now you have the sneering, condescending Gunther talking about how Jey Uso is not a piece of his legacy. And it's a foregone conclusion that match would go the same way it did at Saturday night's main event. And so I thought the framing of Gunther just, feeling like Jey Uso is so far beneath him that this is an insulting spectacle that he has to stand there and treat him like a serious challenger. It was a very smart way to present Gunther. And I think it gets people excited about the possibility of, hey, it doesn't have to go the same way the next time. And people are going to be all about Jey Uso getting that win. And so I think it's good framing. And I don't know what they have planned for. I think the Punk, Rollins, Roman Reigns triangle is very interesting. Obviously Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens had their thing at the end of the show. And, you've got Cody's potential title challenger still hanging out there. So there's a lot of question marks heading into WrestleMania, and it's all a lot of very exciting characters who are very over. It feels very Memphis in a way where you have all these people who are getting cheered with legitimate beef against each other, and they're still technically all baby faces at the same time.
I know
it's a very rare situation in pro wrestling in the modern era, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out. It's fun.
And you kind of got around to the point that I was trying to make and straight off of, which is Jey's win not only can't be fully judged until we see what they do with Roman and Seth and Punk and Cena and everybody else who are the people we perceive as higher on the roster depth chart than Jey. But also, this has an effect that goes further in future years. I mean, people will always remember this as the unexpected Jey win when there were all these other, quote, better options that smart people knew were way more likely to happen. The smart money was on, at least three others, and probably more than three others over Jey. So next year and the year after and the year after and the year after, people are going to talk about this when they defend to their friends or call a show like this or in a chat or email and say, I think this guy can win. All y'all think you know who's going to win and who you can eliminate. You can't. You got showing up in 2025. That's what. So there's a residual ongoing benefit to doing this, and that takes, like, you don't want to do something to sacrifice business this year, so that you can have more suspense in some vague sense in upcoming years. But that is probably an unintended but unavoidable and a positive side effect of this. Is we have just expanded the list of possible winners for all Rumbles for the foreseeable future because Jey won. I mean, it was just down to like the last two. It's like, well, it's not going to be Jey. Almost any of the top guys, if it was Jey and any of the top candidates, we went to thought so. So I love this. I mean, it just kind of recalibrates how confident we can be in future years. So I like that.
Yeah. The dichotomy was interesting too, because you had, the Charlotte win, it felt like Darth Vader coming in at the end of Rogue One. And then you have the Jey win, which was the exact opposite. I guess it goes to show you that the company can be of two minds even on the same night, where they can do the really predictable thing, and then they can do something really unpredictable too. Yep.
And I mean, frankly, they're going to do more predictable things than unpredictable, because predictable in wrestling is often a synonym for the thing that is obviously best for business that they should do, regardless of how many fans see it coming. I mean, I'm sorry, people value unpredictability too much. I've seen a lot of booking decisions that were built on, well, we have to be unpredictable. And it ended up being bad for business because the more obvious choice was predictable because it was obviously the better choice. And there's a lot of savvy fans out there who can see that. Okay, let's pause and introduce ourselves. And then I want to read some of the chat room comments that went on during our discussion. I put some of them on the screen for our YouTube audience. We'll read them for our audio-only podcast audience that'll be downloading the show later. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Monday, February 3rd, 2025. I'm Wade Keller, host of the show, the editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch Weekly newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. And I'm the host of various podcasts, including this, the Wade Keller Post Shows, following Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night on the PWTorch YouTube channel live, and then downloadable on our PWTorch on our Wade Keller Post Show feed. Search Wade Keller on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever iOS or Android app you use. You'll see a red logo pop up and a blue logo. Subscribe to both of them. Even if you watch us on YouTube, there's a lot of other content on those feeds that's not on YouTube that you'll want to have access to when you're in the mood for a podcast. And the blue logo show, by the way, includes our weekly flagship. And we have a variety of people who are in rotation with me on the flagship shows, and we'll have our flagship dropping tomorrow night on the blue logo show, where we will follow up on even more on Raw tonight and the Rumble, and look ahead to the Chamber, also cover AEW, Impact, NXT, the Evolve news, and more. So check that out. That is not on YouTube. That's only podcast. It's only an audio podcast. So search Wade Keller to subscribe. The other face, and on the podcast side of things, voice you hear, is Jake Barnett from ProWrestling.net. Jake, it's great to have you here on a Raw post show. I don't know how often we've done Raw post shows, but I think we've mostly done Dynamite and SmackDown over the years. So it's good to have you on. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here, Wade. Always glad to join you.
Yep. Tell people what you do for ProWrestling.net, how they can read and hear more from you.
Well, you can read more from me every Wednesday night. I just recently moved from SmackDown to Dynamite coverage, so I do a live feed of that show with commentary, as well as an audio review for our members. I appear with Jason Powell on our weekly flagship show, .net Weekly, and I also join him for pay-per-view audio reviews, and that's all for members. So you can find out all about that stuff. I think the link is pwmembership.net if you want to get more information on how to listen and read more of that stuff.
Excellent. I do want to announce, since we've been on YouTube not quite a year, but we haven't run a VIP sale. We plugged VIP. We plugged ways that people can get VIP content. We are right now announcing a VIP sale. I'm going to put the graphic up on the screen. I'll plug it now, plug it again later if you don't catch it right now. And it'll be running this week. And if you've been thinking about being a VIP member, now's a great time, because we just did our Rumble Roundtable. Todd Martin and Rich Fan joined me on Saturday night. We did well over an hour analyzing this event. I will just say Todd gave strong opinions at the beginning. Then I threw to Rich for his thoughts. And after this sort of moment of pause, he goes, well, I think I disagree with everything that I just heard. And then we just had a real spirited debate. We also tried, I think, sort of unintentionally, comedically, to figure out what the storyline was, with Kevin Owens promising Sami Zayn help in the Rumble if Sami helped him beat Cody. And we're trying to figure out if Michael Cole's... That was we throughout the show. We always have fun. We always end up going, not going off track, but having sidebar issues that we wouldn't have had in our plans as a thorough topic. But we got into everything that happened on the Rumble, real thorough discussion. Also, one other thing with VIP membership, then I'll give details on the sale, is I just updated our Royal Rumble special section. And either whether you want to stream them on demand on our ad-free VIP website, or you want to subscribe to our special VIP exclusive Royal Rumble post-show feed, that has been updated. The post-show feed, it's an RSS feed compatible with Apple Podcasts and other popular podcast apps, or you can stream them on demand from our website. We have all our Royal Rumble roundtables that we've done after each Rumble, dating back to 2004. And so you can subscribe to the greater VIP podcast feed with all our shows. You can split it into flashbacks and retro content versus current events. That's a new feature we have for people who only want to get our current shows. They don't want the flashbacks and the nostalgia content, or you do, but you just want to get to it when you have time. You don't want it pushed down by all the new stuff. So we've customized our feed, but we have our Royal Rumble feed too. And that includes all the roundtables dating back to 2004. There's a couple other things on demand that are sprinkled in with some flashback shows that we did on prior Rumbles before we started podcasting in 2004. So that's a really cool perk. You can literally, for the next however long it takes you, march through starting in 2004 all the way through today, 20 some events. And would that be 22 of them? And then, or you can work your way backwards, but it's a real cool perk. So here's the sale. It's a $10 coupon. So you can use it to get $10 off a 1-month sub, a 3-month sub, or an annual subscription. PWTorch.com/GoVIP will give you details on VIP membership. The coupon code for our audio only listeners on the podcast side is 2025 save 10. So 2025 save 10. And when you sign up, you get $10 off a 1-month, 3-month, or annual subscription. Apply that $10 discount to whichever of those 3 terms you want. We also, for our YouTube viewers watching on a laptop or on TV, have a QR code on the screen. You can point your phone's camera at that, and that'll bring you right to the sign-up page where you can choose the option that you want. So that's pwtorch.com/GoVIP, coupon code 2025 save 10. And we'd love for your support. If you enjoy what we do on YouTube and you enjoy our approach to covering wrestling, this is a great way to support us, and you will unlock an amazing amount of content with this full VIP membership option, including content dating back to the late 1980s, our Torch Talk series, transcripts, audio. I could go on and on. There's so much cool stuff. Treat yourself. Take advantage of this coupon this week and see what it's all about. We'd love to get your feedback when you do sign up. Okay, so let's go back to our conversation here. Jake, I mentioned that we had quite a few people in the chat commenting on Jey Uso. I want to read some of those comments because real diverse points of view, mostly positive. But Derek Hubbard said, I've heard people criticize the Jey win, saying his popularity is a facade. Given the fact that he gets this response in full arenas while he is selling merchandise, displays that he is over for real. Jake, I want to get your comment on this because, and this is an argument Todd Martin has made. Todd makes it his way. I'll do my best to summarize it or a facsimile of it, which is Jey is really, really popular, but it's sort of like I like you, but I don't like you in that way in friendships that someone thinks it can become a romantic relationship. There's an argument that Jey is super popular because his ring entrance is great. People think he's a cool guy. They're happy as a tag wrestler. They grew up with him, that he's getting a chance as a singles. They like him in contrast to that mean Roman Reigns before Reigns became the OTC. But they don't really see him that way as a top main event guy, as a world title contender. Maybe on a center it's main event against the secondary world champion. They're going to cheer him against almost any wrestler. But he's not going to close out night 2 of WrestleMania in the final match. We don't see him that way. Now, the crowd response tonight was this: good for you, Jey. We love you. But in the back of people's minds, are they going, there's a little part of me that thinks CM Punk or John Cena or Roman or whoever would have been a better WrestleMania main eventer because they're a better wrestler. They have more gravitas. Do you think any of that's still in play, or did tonight's reaction kind of wipe out a lot of that argument, or is it just not a big enough sample size? So your thoughts on that?
I guess I want to know what criteria people would choose then to define what makes somebody over, because you have these arguments, and I guess you're always going to have skeptics, and that's just the nature of how analyzm or analyst works. But I mean, it feels like you're kind of picking up the goalpost and walking away with it every time he kind of crosses a new hurdle, right? Well, he's over with 94% of the crowd, but there's still 6% that has this thought in the back of their head that he might not be the guy. I don't know how you find that out unless you try. And I think that's what they're trying to do here with Jey Uso. And I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. They have so many other top level acts that are megastars right now that they're going to have in very high level positions at WrestleMania. They're not going to have any issue selling tickets. The show is not going to hinge on whether Jey Uso is a draw. I think this is much ado about nothing in terms of worrying too much about something that's not going to ultimately make a major difference in how people perceive that show.
And to be fair, like Todd's argument is, he's like, I'm really worked up about this, but really it's like going to be the 4th or 5th top selling match on WrestleMania, maybe the 6th once the whole lineup takes shape. This is not a one night show where there's one world championship and this is the main event and their pay-per-view buy rate depends on it and selling tickets depends on it. And maybe we change that. Maybe we move that up into the top 2 or 3 matches based on what I thought was just a stellar exchange with Gunther tonight, which I'll get into. But I think the argument isn't that it necessarily will hurt business. The argument is it's just over pushing Jey. He's a 6 Man of the Year candidate in the NBA. He's not an MVP candidate, that kind of thing. And so, I mean, and I understand that. But I mean, tonight's crowd response is really something. Kavanti Smalls on the chat says Jey surpassed Cody, Roman, and Punk as the most over performer. I don't know, Jake. I mean, this was how much of tonight was we are shocked. We love you. What a big win for you. But in their mind, and I'm saying this for the sake of conversation, and I'm not revealing that I feel this way, but do you think, but I think it's possible. Some people are like, but I still think Roman, Cody, and Punk are bigger stars. Do you think that's still at play? Or is Jey enough in the league where he's in that category? He's not in some subcategory.
I mean, it seems like he's selling a hell of a lot of merchandise, and his call and response entrance is second to none in the company now in terms of getting crowds fired up. Yeah. I guess, again, I don't know what metric we're using to say, Punk, Cody, and Roman are bigger stars. I mean, obviously they have a better track record over a longer period of time. I mean, that's undeniable. Yeah. But it feels like you have to add an addendum to the end of that sentence, like to you, that they're bigger stars to you, and you want to see them in these marquee positions. But I think when you have the ability to do a 2-night WrestleMania and you are going to be featuring 3 or 4 top tier main event level matches, I think you have to elevate somebody at some point to kind of fit into that category where you can say, we made this guy into main event Jey Uso on this show, and see where he is at SummerSlam, and see where he is at Survivor Series, and see if he's still at that level. There's people that move in and out of that spotlight very quickly, and then there's people who have staying power. And I think Cody and Roman and Punk are guys who have had staying power over years and years, and they've earned that right. But I don't know how you get people to that next level unless you legitimately try. I mean, you can wring your hands about whether somebody's ready or not, but I think if you're going to point to somebody who's on the cusp of breaking through on the roster right now in terms of the crowd response and how people are reacting to him, I think you'd have to point to Jey as that guy. So I completely understand the reasoning behind putting him over in that Royal Rumble match.
And I mean, there is a history in the Rumble of that not happening, including, Roman Reigns and Batista instead of Daniel Bryan. And so I'm not saying on the 10-year anniversary they're trying to cleanse themselves of the guilt over or the bad judgment or the baggage or the scar tissue or whatever of the reluctance to push Daniel Bryan. But and Daniel Bryan was obviously Bryan Danielson, a much more accomplished indie wrestler, and than Jey Uso was as a legacy tag team wrestler, which he owned and talked about tonight. And so you can understand and the bias against Daniel Bryan was a Vince McMahon bias against a smaller guy who didn't fit the mold of somebody who looked like they could be on billboards and turn heads at airports. The old reason to go with Diesel instead of Brett and all that kind of thing. I mean, it just goes way back. So at the same time, so Jey is not Daniel Bryan, but so not going with Jey wouldn't have been the same kind of mistake, because I think you can continue to make money and let Jey be fourth from the top, battle for secondary titles, have personal feuds, and I don't think it would have been this egregious bias against him. That said, it is WWE giving the fans what they want. Like, as much as I've kind of played devil's advocate a little bit, I don't think anybody in the audience is like, this is really fun to cheer Jey, but this is he has a responsibility now that he can't live up to. I mean, people can go, well, his matches aren't great. Well, that's not what WWE is about. I mean, you have to have a certain amount of not just competence, but excellent wrestling on average in WWE in big matches. But not every main event star who's really popular needs to be the best at their craft. If you want to see a wrestling company in trouble, if their motto is we wrestle or we're the best wrestle or anything like that, they are in distant second place. Because that's not how you grow. That goes without saying. It's like a really good book, and the motto is great grammar and great use of words. Like, nobody buys a book for that. They expect it. It ought to be well written. It ought to have a vibrant language, but you're buying it for the characters, for the story, for the adventure, for the jeopardy and the thrill of victory, the agony of defeat, whatever the story is. So Jey is part of that, Jake. So anything else you want
He's
to say on
also
that?
a different.
Yeah.
He's also appealing to a wider demographic than I think your traditional, the stars that your average internet wrestling fan are going to point out. Kind of fit a particular archetype, right? And I think Jey lands a little bit outside of the normal wheelhouse for people who would listen to this show or follow the the internet wrestling community or whatever you want to call it adamantly. And so there's a little bit of pushback because he's not, he doesn't fit exactly inside that mold. But the fact that he's got, the way that they've been presenting him with all the hip hop stars and, it appears that they're attempting to attract a wider audience. And you see that, with Penta as well. They're reaching outside of the demographics that a lot of people consider their core audience. And I think that's where they see expansion. And I would expect more of it in the future. And I think Jey's just a part of that.
Yep. All right, back to some chats here. Trip McNeely says, Jey is not in the same fan base of Punk, Roman, or Cena. He's liked by that fan base, but he's super over with the younger generation, and it's about building the future. And that's an interesting way to put it. Do you think Jey is appealing to younger fans than CM Punk or Roman Reigns or even Cody?
I think so. I guess the catchphrase, I guess, is probably over with a younger fan base. I see a lot of people, in my age bracket, and I know I'm 41, so take that for what it's worth. But they react to Yeet and with like a cringe. But the younger crowd is much more into it, and so I think it comes to a point where like I have to just say, even if something is not for me, it's clearly working. And I enjoy Jey seemingly more than the people who are vehemently against him. But I think that's probably a true statement that he's aiming for a different audience than me, for instance. He's just not the kind of character that I traditionally have watched throughout my entire decades worth of time watching wrestling, and that's okay. Sometimes the wrestling has to move on from guys like me, and that's fine.
And I think there's an infectious joy. I talked about this with Jason Jordan and Chad Gable back in the NXT. One thing I really liked about them is they gave off a joy of performance. They just they seemed to genuinely love what they were doing in a way that just didn't seem phony or maudlin or whatever, schmaltzy. It just felt like these two just love what they're doing. There was an enthusiasm, a joy of performance. And Jey has that, but he also has humility. Like there's a humility about Jey, and there's something, like Steve Austin was perfect for the time because of the context in which he was a breakout star. Hulk Hogan was because it was a time when muscular guys and kids grew up watching Hulk and Arnold and all, and like top stars of their era or wrestlers who kind of overshoot the projection of where they'll land, like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels did, frankly. They're the result of not just the moment they're in, but the era right before them. And with Jey, I think he's a reflection of people wanting to get behind someone who seems like genuinely a good person. Like he comes across like this really jovial, good person who's also humble. And he's overachieving because he worked hard. He's in an unexpected... I just think the WWE audience, with the place that we're in right now and the journey we've been on, kind of just wants to feel good. They just want to dance and they want to yeet and they want to see somebody who isn't ordained the way that Gunther sells himself as being ordained. Frankly, the way Braun Breaker as a stud athlete is ordained, the way Roman Reigns with his Hollywood looks and physique is ordained. Jey is this counter to that. And I think WWE is realizing that. Ken Arnold says in the chat, what Jey did tonight, how the crowd reacted, was as real and genuine as you can get in wrestling. Jey is someone that people can connect with. Yeah. Roman Reigns did not. Like, we're about to, in our 10 years ago flashback shows that we put on our podcast feed, on the Wade Keller Pressing Post Show and podcast feed, we're going to, getting into Roman and what his deficiencies are when he was being pushed as a top babyface. And one of them was, and I coined the term, or I don't coin the term is right, but I used the term, Roman wasn't emotionally accessible to the fans. He was emotionally inaccessible. There was this veneer of, it's a job, but I'm kind of not one of you. I'm just kind of cooler and better. And he went on the podcast circuit and said, well, I'd rather play in the NFL. And then when I went to the CFL, the accommodations weren't really up to my standards. And then I decided to get into the furniture building business with my family. And then when that didn't work out, I finally said, well, maybe I'll follow in the footsteps of my cousin and my family. It was like, wait, this isn't your first love? I mean, it was just an insane, weird, like, way too honest of Roman. And then in the ring, he had these terrible scripts. He was miscast. And he was the
blue contacts and the supper and
Yes.
succotash and the whole business. Yeah.
and
it was awful.
and Michael Cole's catchphrases and all that he'd shout when he come out. So in the moveset, the Superman punch, and it felt like a video game when he would reenact or play out his little routine. So with Roman, there was an emotional inaccessibility to him, and he also he was the only babyface I can think of who was pushed on top in a sustained way by a successful company or a top company who couldn't cut the go home babyface promo to sell a pay-per-view, to sell the title defense. Like, he just couldn't get himself to say, yeah, hey fans, your support means something to me. I've got a challenge in front of me. Be on my side. Like, every babyface did that in their own way, and Roman could never tap into that. Roman is mega successful. He was finally cast correctly as a heel, and now is sort of this, whatever he is now. And I mean that in a good way. It's just sort of undefined. It's just Roman. Totally worked, and it's what we talked about for years would be better for him. Be heel. He'd be great as a heel, and then the cool factor would propel him to a successful face run. With Jey, he is emotionally accessible, and that's what Ken's getting into. People feel a connection with him. Those tears tonight, and the fact that I thought the show tonight was going to go 3 hours because I thought Jey went way over, and they were going to cut anyone else's time. They just let him soak up that moment, and I think it was the right call. I mean, I think it might have tested a few people's patience, but I found it compelling, Jake.
Yeah, he's an everyman for a different generation. It's not going to be the son of a plumber in 2025. It's going to be a different type of approachable that's going to connect with a modern audience, and I think they found that with Jey, and he did seem genuine. I mean, as much as you can be, when you're standing in front of an audience cutting a scripted promo, but the tears were real, and he was choked up, and he was struggling to get the words out, and those are all relatable things. I mean, we've probably all been in public speaking situations where you were a little choked up and didn't quite know how to get the words out, and so those are all. I mean, some people might say, "Ooh, boy, he botched the promo," but I think that made it even more approachable and real to a certain audience. So I think that all worked for me. I was a big fan of the way it worked, and then it hit an entirely different plane once you had Gunther out there to bounce off of. So it worked really well.
Oh, we'll get into that soon. The chat's got great comments to extend this discussion, but we got a lot else to talk about tonight too. Chris Rucker in the chat says, Jey seems real even the way he does his promos. It's not polished. Just seems like a dude that loves wrestling talking to you. It's relatable. Very well put. Kavanti Small says, King of Strong Style, some within the IWC aren't big fans of Jey's limited moveset, but longtime fans of the business recognize that dynamic moveset isn't the defining metric for a top star. That's undeniably true. Darrell Freeman says, Jey and the fans who come to the show are really locked in each week. The people keep growing behind him. He is a babyface who admits his faults. He doesn't run, doesn't allow it to hold him back. And Ken Arnold says, what happened with Jey tonight and moving forward will be fun to watch. Gunther was and is the perfect heel for not just Jey, but any babyface to overcome. So let's talk about Gunther's role in this, because Ken brings him up. When Jey won, I was like, I don't want to see another Jey Gunther match. I mean, Gunther beat him. He bragged rightfully. He, whatever he said, it whipped his ass. He didn't say whipped his ass, but whatever it was, he kicked his ass. And almost a character break for Gunther last week, the way he kind of just gleefully said that. And he was so smug about it, but it wasn't wrong. I mean, it was a clean, decisive win. And then Gunther comes out there and WWE owns what I'm thinking about this match. What I was thinking about it last week when I imagined, well, what if Jey won? Well, it'd have to be a Gunther rematch. And if that was going to happen, they wouldn't have spent that at Saturday's main event and booked it the way that they did. And Jey Cody doesn't make enough sense to do. Who knows anymore, right? Success WWE. They took away our certitude about anything. But Gunther saying and owning what we're thinking, which is, you are not someone who, if I beat at WrestleMania, it builds my legacy enough. So don't pick me. But if you pick me, the only way to build my legacy, the only way to make this worth my time is to make life miserable for you the next 2 months and destroy you at WrestleMania. He raised the bar. He was nasty. He was arrogant. He acted superior. He treated Jey as less than him. And by the end, I mean, I'm like, I don't buy wrestling merchandise. I cover wrestling as a journalist. It's not my approach to things. I know a lot of people approach their commentary and all that differently. I'm not someone who shows up at wrestling with wrestling t-shirts. And I'm not going to buy a Jey Uso t-shirt, but like, I could totally imagine if I quit my job tomorrow and just went to a show, like I might buy a Jey Uso t-shirt to root against Gunther. And I have utmost respect for Gunther. I enjoy him in a sort of a stand back, like he's great at what he does level. But what fun would it be to be in a giant venue cheering Jey and booing Gunther? And I thought that segment tonight laid that groundwork for everybody to just lose themselves in the moment, and I think they will if they go with that match. So Jake, your thoughts?
There's a line in there that you didn't mention that I thought was interesting, and it was especially meta for Gunther, where he said, "I've had to learn box office.
Yes,
I had to work hard to make it seem like you could beat me.
That I'm vulnerable." And, I think,
yeah, that I was vulnerable, and so I was like, yeah, okay, Jay's got to shoot him at this point. Like that's the only way you come back from that. So, I think Gunther is the perfect foil for an everyman babyface character, and he's very aware of who he is and what his strengths are, and he leans into them, especially well, and crowds are eating out of the palm of his hand. And there was a time when Gunther did not have that repertoire in when he got on the microphone. And
yes,
it's been very remarkable to watch how quickly he's picked that up as a part of, just the last couple of years. Not only did he transform his body and become something that was much different than when he arrived in the company, but he's also sharpened pretty much every other aspect of his game. He's, you can say that he's the number 2 champion, but as far as performances go, he's not a number 2 champion, by any stretch. He's about as good as a heel champion as WWE could produce in 2025. So I think he's an excellent foil for Jey, and I think the crowd response when they finally get into the thick of their build for their match, if that is the match they go with, I think will be pretty remarkable to watch.
Is it the match they go with?
I mean, if I was betting on it today, I would say yes. But, they've been unpredictable with Jey, and so I can't rule out they go in some other direction. But I don't think Jey and Cody is nearly as interesting, personally. I think there's other opponents for Cody that I would prefer they go with.
I feel like we could talk a lot about the Cody option, but for the sake of getting to other topics on the show and our room full of callers in the waiting room and an on-site correspondent, we won't go there. But I'm not ruling it out. It would be a shame to have such a great promo from Gunther and go a different direction. But if they do, that means they have confidence. They got something else great for Gunther, and that they can tell a great story with Jimmy and Cody. But I'm not ready to even entertain that right now, because I feel like what they did tonight, showed their hand, and it is a revenge match for Jey. It fits his character. I'm not ruling out, by the way, a third option, and I don't know what that is. I haven't thought it through, but Gunther's like, I'm going to make life miserable for you. Does Gunther take out Jey? It might be too similar to what Seth did to Roman or what KO's doing to Sami. But again, I throw it out there with thinking it's not going to happen. It's almost no chance of happening. But maybe this is so crazy they're really not going to do it, and they're going to save Jey versus Gunther for a different event when they really need to sell tickets and they really want people to be interested. So Gunther, he did say, I'm going to make life miserable for you. You're not worth my time. I want to face someone else. So, could he injure Jey, and then Roman, who's been knocked out by Seth? Again, I'm not trying to fantasy book. I'm just playing out a scenario among several as illustrative of the point. Roman shows up and goes, I'm healthy and I'm ready to take you out because you took out Jey. And now we get Roman babyface Gunther. So I just throw that out there because it crossed my mind. Maybe there's a third path they're on and everything sort of falls into place. And Jey still gets his match. It's just isn't at WrestleMania, and the heat is on Gunther for it.
I mean, like I said, I couldn't rule it out, but I feel like they've been pretty disciplined about not fixing things that aren't broken, and so I hope they don't go down that. Yep.
Although some would say, why break the obvious, which should be CM Punk, Roman, and Cena, 2 of those 3 get the world title matches. Now they're trying to fix something that's not broken by, quote, pushing Jey beyond what people expected. So,
I have opinions on the Cena thing, but we don't have to get into that.
we can. We will. We'll aim it. Brock Benningfield says, I'm picturing Wade in a Yeet t-shirt. Sadler version 3 says, Gunther was great tonight. Dan says, Jey, everything to gain and nothing for Gunther to have a match. And Mike Myers, PWTorch contributor, guest on the Acknowledging WWE podcast, PWTorch Daily Cast. Search PWTorch on your podcast app, by the way. There's a whole other podcast feed, part of the PWTorch family, that I don't host. The Daily Cast, PWTorch Daily Cast, with different shows each day of the week with different themes focused on AEW, NXT, WWE. The 90s Past Cast, looking at a 30 years ago back issue, Wrestling Night in America, which featured our Royal Rumble post show with Greg Parks and Brandon LeClaire. On and on, coast to coast, covering indie scene. I'm leaving someone off. I'm so sorry. Anyway, Mike Myers says, I'm cynical, and I bought into Jey's nervous energy tonight. Maybe we need more info, but he's a coward if he doesn't stand up to Gunther and his threats in the coming weeks. Yeah, I don't doubt Jey's going to stand up to Gunther. I mean, I don't think Gunther was a jerk, but yeah, I think he's going to stand up to him.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, I think he's got, he was caught in an emotionally vulnerable situation, right? Like he had just sort of unloaded a lot of feelings onto the crowd, and Gunther was able to take advantage of him in that situation. And so I expect him to have a stiffer upper lip, I guess, in the coming weeks. Jey's never really backed down from a challenge in that regard.
No. Al Archer in the chat says, Jey seems like a real guy with flaws. He's not the sharpest, often a follower, struggled to find himself on his own. Now he has the confidence with a Rumble win. And I would add to it the confidence of being buoyed by the crowd, believing in him. And that's a great story to tell in the context of pro wrestling, is a wrestler who rises above his normal, natural sort of water level because the fans raise him to that level, which is why, top baby faces, 4 out of 5 roughly, or 19 out of 20 perhaps, always play to, and hey, sports teams do. It's not just because of referees favoring home teams. Being at home and the fans being behind you does inspire athletes when they have 82 game seasons or 164 whatever game seasons. It's like it can get a little monotonous. It can feel like a job. And when you get home and the crowd's cheering for you and you see familiar faces and you can see the kids who paid money and they're excited for it, you want to work harder for them. That's a story pro wrestling tells well. This is interesting too. Al Archer adds, Jey is a stark contrast to the polish of Cody. The announcers talked about Cody as having like perfect teeth, it was like they were talking about him like I thought they were trying to turn him heel on commentary on Saturday, the way that they were framing him. I mean, it's things you'd want said about you unless you're a babyface man of the people. Jey is an interesting contrast to the ostentatious polish of Cody at this point. And I don't know. I'm curious how, Punk and Cody look at this and go, and Roman, I think Roman's just fine. He's part-time, top paid guy, doesn't care enough to be upset. He cares a lot, but he doesn't care in that way. I think he's secure in himself at this point. He's won. But Punk and Cody still has a lot to prove and a legacy to build. And they got Jey sort of, usurping his status as the babyface of the people. It's really interesting.
It is. Yeah. And I guess I look forward to Cody, and I know he's resisted the idea of a heel turn, but I think leaning into that to the extent where he takes on a bit of what we saw from Gunther tonight, where he's just like, you're so far beneath me. Like, why? Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people have drawn, the comparisons to Homelander and that whole bit where he's just, full evil. I think that could be a part of it too. But there's a narcissism to Cody even now that could really be ramped up to 11 with a heel turn. And I think that would be a really fascinating character study for him, down the road. But I guess that really depends on him being willing to do it, which I know, was kind of something he resisted pretty heavily, both in AEW and in WWE now. So.
I think he has less veto power now than he did ever before. Yeah. If Paul Levesque just says, yeah, let's do this. And then he and Paul Heyman talk Cody into it. I mean, Cody will be talked into it, I think. Because obviously Paul would be involved in that. Well, I shouldn't say obviously, but I suspect Paul Heyman would be part of that storyline as it played out, and they would sell him on it. If Levesque believed in it, I think he'd lay out all the matches and the options and the story arc that would lead Cody back to a better place. Andrew H. in the chat says, I said yeet at work today. 39-year-old general sales manager in the car business. Cole bragging tonight that just noting it's in the dictionary, that yeet is in the dictionary now. Ken Arnold says, people can relate to Jey because he's made mistakes in life and owned them and found a way to come back and push himself to be better. I know there's a lot of other great comments. We may get to some of them later, but I want to move on to other topics. If you want to, if you think I missed a poignant comment you made, or you really want us to respond to something on Jey, you can do a super chat. That'll grab our attention, and we always give super chats priority and a minute of our time at least talking about it. So I'll just throw that out there as an option if you feel kind of lost in the crowd of a busy chat room tonight. I want to go. Jason D from Australia is on hold. I hope he can stick with us. We'll go to him next, and he can either respond to this or bring up something else. I've got David Miller also waiting, but I believe we have Dom, who attended tonight in Cleveland. So I want to bring him on to talk about being in that building. So I think the Jey discussion will continue, but this might open the door to talk about Charlotte, Sami, and others too. Dom, welcome to the show. What was it like in the building tonight? And Dom, you're muted, by the way. Hopefully you're ready for us. I don't think I muted you.
Hey, guys. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, now we can. Thanks, Dom.
All right. Yeah, wonderful. I'm still driving home from the show right now, so I'll probably keep it kind of brief. I sent some notes in. I'm not sure how much I can touch on it. Hopefully you received them so you can get some of the general notes that I left.
I did. But, yep, I got your email.
Cool. Well, yeah, and then I guess if you had any questions based on those notes, feel free to fire them off. My general impression of the show, having been to, more than I can count at this point, is that, it's certainly it's a hot product, right? We know that right now, but I am starting to get the feeling that it's kind of peaking. There's a little bit of delusion going on here, I think, almost to the point where WWE is now they've always done this, right? But they're really making themselves seem like a much bigger deal than they are now. Now I get that's always been their shtick, but I don't know. I don't know if maybe I'm just becoming more jaded because of a lot of the advertisements, the product placements, the way that they're conducting things now. I'm starting to feel like I did some years ago, where I felt like I was just more of a prop in the show, right, than I was just, the show being for the fans that are in the building and so forth. And so I don't know, I'm feeling just leaving that show a little bit unfulfilled. But, I was happy to see that there was a lot of new fans. So generally speaking, when talking to some of the parents that were there, they were like, well, my son saw it on Netflix and now he's into it and he wants to come to the show. And we're talking, under 10-year-old kids. So I think they planted some seeds for that next generation of fans. But I don't know if a character like Jey Uso or Cody Rhodes is really going to be able to carry that we had Stone Cold, or maybe the generation prior to me had Hulk Hogan, and the the kids of the tail end of the millennials or whatever had John Cena. Right. I get everything that people have expressed about Jey Uso in the comments tonight and in general have been true. And he is relatable and so forth. But I'm getting more of a Daniel Bryan, Zack Ryder kind of feel from Jey Uso. And sure, when he, shed a tear on stage tonight, I was emotionally captivated by it. And I felt for him and so forth. But at the same time, I think a lot of that, with the pausing and the soaking up the crowd and I don't know if it was on TV, but him rolling, redoing the entrance music again. And, when I was at SmackDown back in August, he did his entrance 5 times for the dark match, and I'm just like, okay, and what I'm saying here is he's kind of they were just kind of doing what they could do for time, because he wasn't about to deliver some real long, heartfelt promo. It was a heartfelt promo, right? But it wasn't oh, everybody can't wait to hear what he has to say, right? It wasn't stop what you're doing to hear this guy. That's why Gunther came in pretty quickly and really did carry that, that segment, in my opinion. But no, and no disrespect. I think Jey does deserve everything he's getting. But what I'm saying is, like, I don't know if the kids are gonna, really latch onto him beyond the entrance. And like, who's my perspective from, I'm always in like a shareholder perspective, right? Like how sustainable is this run, and are they going to dilute the product so much to the point where like people are going to start to feel a little bit like, I think I've had my fill, right?
Yeah.
And I've heard some people on the Torch and various outlets saying that, the product is starting to become almost oversaturated and a lot of overexposure going on with the Saturday main events and, all this, the Netflix stuff. But I don't know. I'm leaving this show just a little bit unfulfilled tonight.
Yeah, so I want to jump in because there's a few things you're bringing up that are interesting. One, you're part of this crazy high energy crowd that's 13,000, roughly 13,000 give or take. WrestleTix just under 13,000. WWE bragging just over 13, close enough. They're doing record business left and right, and they have all these tie-ins, all these sponsors, high-end sponsors. WWE, it used to be a headline story when WWE got like a major corporate sponsor like 30 years ago, and now they don't have enough room for them. They're on Netflix. They are mega successful. Of course, there's going to be some fans who feel like, I think I don't know if this is the case with you, Dom, because it doesn't sound like specifically it's what you're saying, but I think there's going to be some fans who liked the band when they played in front of 300 people at the club.
Yeah,
but now that they're playing stadium shows,
I know exactly what you mean. That's where my girlfriend is at, where she's saying, because I've expressed this to her, even as even since a couple months ago now. She's like, "You're such a hipster, you liked them before it was cool, and now that it's cool, you're like, I didn't do this anymore." And I completely understand that, but I'm just, I'm really more business mindset, right? Like, so I'm a buy low, sell high kind of guy, right? So I might be becoming a little bearish on the long-term outlook at this point. I mean, long term, right? If we're talking the next 50 years, we're fine. But I'm just saying, like, over the course of this next 5 years of this Netflix deal, like, at what point do they kind of fizzle out, or who is really going to bring in this new era and keep people engaged? Because I don't see anybody on the roster that really can at this point.
So Dom,
cheap pops, but go ahead.
I'm going to jump in just because you're bringing up big picture topics, and
I understand.
If all we do is talk about Raw only, we're going to go 4 hours. We're going to have to edit. We don't want.
I understand.
I don't want to talk to you who were at the show tonight. We have questions for you about why WWE can't make this last forever. That's a topic for Flagship or another show.
I understand.
So I'm gonna pivot now and ask you, all cynicism, hipster accusations aside, what was it like being in there with Jey Uso in that reaction to him? I mean, yeah, you sort of conveyed it, but I mean, come on. You're driving home and you're going, I don't know if they can make this mega successful run that they've never experienced before last. Shift out of that gear and just talk about how, like, be a young, wide-eyed fan again and think about how cool it was to be in a building with Jey Uso getting that kind of response. I've watched pro wrestling long enough and WWE long enough. I was front row for Sting when he beat Ric Flair in 1990 in Baltimore. I mean, I've been there for big, supposedly transitional moments, and part of the Yes movement with Daniel Bryan, all kinds of stuff. That felt like that should be like a positive memory, not you sitting here lamenting that in 6 months.
No, I get it, but I'm always looking at it from the perspective of, like,
I'm asking you to not do that right now.
But I'm saying, like, was he really crying though, right? Like, I want to believe that he was. Yeah. Right. But that's where I'm at. I'm like, okay. I mean, I understand it, and if I'm just part of the show, it was cool. And I appreciated that he was into it, but
Dom, I'm
feeling like
I'm twisting on because I want to keep the pace up, and I don't want super long answers from you, just because I feel pressure. Everyone's got to get to bed soon, within the next couple hours. So I want to try to hit a few things with you. One of them is, yes, you can have a healthy cynicism about whether those tears were real. But what was real goes to that super awful little tagline that Netflix was using in December, which is, "You can't fake this." And they'd show the fans. Whether Jey was faking it or not, like, who cares? I mean, like, we can care. I mean, we can. That's a day two analysis. But day one tonight, right now, what you can fake is a crowd is really, really into Jey. Whether the tears were real or not, like
for sure. Like I said in my notes, he did have the biggest pop of the night for sure, and he had the biggest pop of the SmackDown that I went to back in August. So this wasn't something that was like a surprise to me. And not even him winning the Rumble, I didn't think was a huge surprise. When he was one of the last few left, I actually started to think that maybe they're going to give it to Jey. So I mean, I'm not like against the guy's success. I love those guys. I appreciate his work ethic, and I think he's great. I'm just from that show tonight. I think it was kind of a weird. I felt like it was more of a almost like I said, it felt like a peak to me. But I was also feeling like, man, I was a little bit like, I don't know. It started to feel like they're going through the motions to me.
Well, Kansas City Chiefs fans might be thinking this is the peak moment. How long can this last? But they're going to really enjoy the Super Bowl next weekend, and all the build-up, and they're going to enjoy the success they're having right now. Dom, the reaction to Charlotte. Let's talk about this for a moment.
It was terrible. Yeah, 80% of the crowd was booing her for sure.
Yeah, I saw you mention the email. Do you think she won over any fans as she said, "Oh, I like y'all, like you're
no.
Yeah, tell me.
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, she had a few people. Like I said, some of the ringside people that just wanted to do the, bow down type thing because of the legacy, the heritage in her name and whatnot. But no, people weren't even. I don't know if you also saw in my notes that the audio was terrible tonight. Not the first time I've experienced bad audio at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, but it was much better at SmackDown back in August. So I don't know what they did, but it was hard to understand most of the promos tonight anyway.
That's too bad.
So I didn't really, a lot of what she said wasn't coming across right. And at first it seemed like she was doing more of she was going to do her babyface thing. And it sounded to me almost like she had two positions in her head, right? She's like, okay, plan A is to kind of cater to the crowd, but if it seems like they turn on me pretty quickly, I'm going to go to plan B. And she switched to plan B pretty damn quick, probably within 10 seconds of her starting to speak. So it did seem like I could tell she's kind of like, okay, I'm going to need to go bad girl now. But it's weird because I just think that, again, she's someone that I respect from, a work ethic perspective. She didn't just make it on her name. While obviously the nepotism helped, but at the same time, she would have been long gone, if she couldn't go when the bell rang, and that's great. But it's almost, she is playing that part of the Cody heel right now, right? Like she's that perfect this and that, and and I think I don't know why there's always been this like wish-wash with her, right? Like it's just lean into that. That's it. Just be your dad. Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe she doesn't want to, but like, when was Rick a babyface? Like, when did he try to be a babyface? Like, you might know, but I don't, in all of my wrestling knowledge, he was always that guy you love to hate. And I don't know why she doesn't just lean into it. I mean, it's fine. Maybe she wishes she could sell more merch or something. I don't know. But no, it wasn't positive at all. And I don't know what they could do to get her, to get better reactions. I don't really think there's anything.
Did you think the ratio of wrestling to talking was different than you had experienced before? Because I haven't done the math. I haven't like done any kind of breakdown of, but it just seems like there's more talking and less wrestling on the Netflix shows, but it's a small sample size. It's been Rumble build. It was the premiere and all that. But did you feel like there wasn't enough bell-to-bell action, or do you think, especially with the really strong Punk Sami match at the end, it was fine?
Yeah, no, I don't know, because I think our sample size is still too small to make these judgments yet, right? It's only been a month, but I think that what we're seeing less of is those like gimmick comedy, whatever, right? Like those like they do a little bit of the title celebrations and stuff like that still, but I think Triple H has done a good job of kind of scaling that stuff back. The comic relief type moments that didn't really hit all that hard anyway. We're talking about like the weddings and the weird stuff, right? That I think the more of the variety show aspect, right, is starting to go away a little bit, and they're filling those times with more like cameos and more backstage segments. I think really, I think there's been more. If I had to think, I think there's more in ring action in, at least maybe not in the Netflix era, but since Triple H has taken the book, I think there's been more. I don't know who can disagree with that. I mean, I think that we've seen more higher quality matches week to week, but you still have to have the promo times. I know people that only like the promos too, right? My girlfriend's one of them, right? She's just more into, she wants the drama. That's why she watches with me. So
the answer is tonight didn't feel like there was enough wrestling. Just the short answer is no.
I think it felt, at least to me, and just the feeling of being there for 2.5 hours, I thought I was watching more wrestling than I was watching promo.
Okay, good.
And maybe just because the promos were coming off so bad on the audio.
Yeah,
it felt more like wrestling.
That's a good point. Jake, do you have anything you want to ask Dom about his experience in the building tonight? My co-host Jake Barnett.
I'm primarily curious about the main event. I guess it seemed like the reaction was primarily on Sami's side throughout the match, but then everybody got pretty loud for Punk's victory. So I guess it was just two faces that both got strong reactions. But how was that match in the arena? Were you feeling the near falls and everything, or did
Yeah, I'm not sure. And Jake, sorry I didn't say hi to you, man. I like all your work, man. You and Jason over there at ProWrestling.net. So go check them out too. You guys rock. But
thank you.
No, I don't think I've ever spoken to you, Jake, before. So just want to acknowledge you. You're awesome, man. But I think you nailed it, though. I mean, I think it really was more split throughout the match. There was a lot of dueling chants going on. I don't know how well it came across on TV, but there definitely was a lot of CM Punk, Sami Zayn. Like for example, when CM Punk was. He had him in the, I don't know if that was the whatever that clutch is, he had him in the submission maneuver, and there was a lot of like tap out chants, but there was also Sami chants, right? So, but the victory, I mean, it seemed like even there had to have been people that were just cheering for Sami too, cheered for Punk's victory, because it was definitely a resounding, appreciation of his win. He got a big applaud there. So, I think people were just enjoying the match in general. Nobody was really concerned about picking sides. They were just happy to see, two of the best in the world, if you will, right? Live in color. So they looked great. I mean, it was a pleasure to see him.
Who got the biggest responses of the night? Like, was there a top tier? Was there a clear number one? Was there a clear top three?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Jey Uso. I mean, for sure got the biggest reaction. As far as like during the matches themselves, I mean, the Liv Io match, people seem pretty engaged in, even though I thought that like people were starting to get tired, towards the end of hour 2 for sure. And even though Io had like no response on her entrance, they were like really firmly behind her, but that could also just be a symptom of people wanting to, root against Liv. But I mean, Io, like she performed great. I think she had the best performance of the night from a in-ring perspective. And so people really, I think a lot of people walked away thinking that was the match of the night. I really do. And people in my general area too had that same consensus. I mean, that was a great match. The Rey Mysterio match, I don't know if maybe I'm just the old one now, but I'm like, we should be like cherishing every night that we get to watch this guy, because who knows how much longer we'll have him, and that was the bathroom break match. That was the concession break match. Once the New Day's music hit, a lot of people left. And then once the luchadors came out, and I mean, people were like, all right, we'll be back. Like a bunch of people in my section just were gone for that. And I couldn't believe it, because I'm like, dude, you guys, this is Rey Mysterio Jr. Like, I know he cut the Jr. a long time ago, but you know what I mean.
How do you think Penta worked as a live performer in front of the crowd?
Yeah, I thought he was great. His entrance itself was the coolest, like, live entrance, right? There was a lot of lights and whatever for Charlotte, but the pyro stuff they did, I mean, I think he captivated people, right from the start there. Penta did great, and there was a lot of oohs and ahs, and I think it was well received. A lot of people, even around me, were mentioning like, this is the guy I came to see, like that type of talk. So. I definitely think he's a draw. I was glad he was there. I've never seen him wrestle in person before, and he definitely, I felt like happy to pay a seat, pay for my seat to watch him. So, yeah, I was thrilled with Penta's performance, and even though it wasn't like his right, it wasn't some 5-star match or whatever, but I mean, still, like I think we were all really pleased with it.
Jake, anything else you want to stop before we let him go?
I guess bigger reaction negatively for, was it Gunther when he was putting down Jey, or was it Kevin Owens at the end of the show when he ran out for the pile driver?
Yeah, so like actual negativity would have to go to Logan Paul. I mean, people were just FUing him out of the building. Like Logan sucks and F you Logan. And, I mean, there was a handful of like, some young kids that, were kind of, into him when he first came out. But I mean, they even joined along with the crapping all over him. I mean, it was kind of mixed like at first, but I mean, as far as the amount of negativity, I mean, Kevin, definitely got some boost too. But I think I'm a huge Kevin Owens fan, so I wasn't booing him. Like I'm always glad to see him. I'm like I don't know. I was at I think it was the last Raw in Cleveland. The main event had all those guys in it, including Cody. Right? It was well, it had Sammy, KO, and Cody versus I don't even remember, but like any time that I get to see Kevin Owens, Sami Zayn in the main event, I mean that's money well spent. I mean those guys are the best of our generation. I really believe that.
Cool, Dom. Thanks for taking time to talk to us. I appreciate it, and safe travels.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks you guys both. You guys do great work. Everybody go VIP.
Thank you very much. All right, PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Save $10 with coupon code 2025 save 10. All right.
Logan Paul was sure mad at somebody on commentary. Did you pick up on that while you were watching?
No,
the show?
I didn't. Describe what happened.
He wasn't on a microphone, but he was seated next to the commentary table, and he was repeatedly yelling at somebody that they had went too far, and I think it was a fan.
Oh,
so I don't know if somebody said something just completely outrageous to him or what had happened, but he seemed like he was legitimately mad about it, whatever it was.
I don't think Logan ever gets to complain about somebody going too far with his history. I think he's got to have. I mean, I don't know what the fan said, so it would have to. I'll put it this way: too far has to be very, very, very far for Logan to take offense to anything, given how he made his name. Yeah, I'll just say that. All right, let's go to, as promised, Jason D from Australia first. We got callers lined up. We're going to get to you guys as we go here. Jason, welcome. Always good to hear from you. Your thoughts on Raw tonight? What's on your mind?
All right, yeah, thanks, Wade and Jake. So I know you've got other callers on, so I'll try and be quick, but I'm pretty strong on Jey Uso's win and what they should do with this, because I understand what Todd is saying about Jey Uso. There's being over with the crowd as far as your reactions and getting the crowd involved, but then there's also being over as far as your believability in fans buying into you, getting victories against genuine main eventers. And I feel like that's the bridge he has to cross, right? And they have a great chance to tell a really good story with Jey. It's not just overcoming Gunther, but it's breaking out. Look, it's one thing to get to the main event, but it's also another thing to win the main event. And if you look from a storyline wise, Jey has been very unsuccessful in big singles matches, with the exception of defeating Braun Breaker for the IC title. But even then, he only held the title for 3 weeks, right? Yeah. So what I would like to see, like we need to see the man behind the yeet. So even a sit-down interview with Jackie Redmond, talking about his progress and him detailing it and talking about the losses he had along the way. And even Sami Zayn, whatever happened with him with Kevin Owens, I can imagine Sami or Cody giving him sort of like a pump-up type of motivational speech. If you look at Sami Zayn, right, storyline-wise, the way that he defeated Gunther at WrestleMania last year, he had to bring out a brainbuster on the top turnbuckle. Now, storyline-wise, Gunther wouldn't be expecting that. So Sami had to show something Gunther that he wasn't expecting in order to beat him. And I feel like that's the story they're going to tell with Jey, is that Jey's going to have to show something Gunther wouldn't expect, because Gunther's talked about always being in control. Jey has to show Gunther he's not always in control, and Jey might even also have to surprise himself. He's going to have to show something more than what we've seen him in this particular match in order for fans then to really, really buy into him as a genuine main eventer. And I think that is the story they're going to tell here. Because remember with Triple H, right? Triple H needed that match with Foley at Royal Rumble 2000 to cement himself as a genuine main eventer. We had to see that hardcore style. Well, one of Jey's criticism is that he kind of goes to his same moves in the ring. If he can show in this match against Gunther that he can counter Gunther and out wrestle him and show Gunther's not in control and get the victory, that's going to go a long way to really cementing Jey. So I believe that's the story they're going to tell. It's one thing to get to the main event, but you have to win the main event. And in order to do that, you broke out of your comfort zone when you became a tag team wrestler to a singles. Now you're going to have to break out of your comfort zone again. If they tell that story, I think they're on a winner.
I think that is a story they will probably try to tell. Part of me thinks what you're saying, Jason, sounds like what it would apply to a 31-year-old Jey Uso or a 29-year-old Jey Uso. I look at this more like the Houston Rockets decades ago when it was Scottie Pippen and Charles Barkley joined Hakeem Olajuwon for a dream team to try to win a championship. Like, no one thinks it's going to be a team that stacks together 10 great years together. It was just, let's enjoy this moment. Like, three big time star Hall of Famers come together. We're going to try to win a title. So I just throw that out there because, like, to me, people are just going to enjoy Jey putting up a fight. I don't think this isn't really a counter to what you're saying. I think it's just an appendage to it. I don't think people will think that it wasn't worth the journey if Jey comes up short. I just think they're going to be into enjoying this ride and hoping, like, he won the Rumble and we thought it was impossible. Maybe he wins at WrestleMania. And frankly, I'm not ruling it out, but to tell that story believably and effectively to get people's hopes up more than they might be, that's where what you're saying comes into play. And, he had the Braun win, but then he lost. What will they do to make fans believe Jey has a chance against Gunther? As a Minnesota sports fan, I've seen a lot of teams that were not going to win a championship, but you get up for, maybe we can upset the champions coming to town. Maybe we can play the spoiler. And you just get into it in that context. And is that how people are going to see this, Jake? We don't think Jey's going to beat Gunther. He might. We'll cheer for him. We're okay if he doesn't. Or does WWE, for this to really be worth doing, have to show that Jey has a different gear and make them more confident than not that he has a really good chance?
Well, I would say he's got a decent chance. I think they see Jey Uso and Sami Zayn as a money feud down the road. And whether it's for the world title or not, I guess, is up for debate. But
yeah,
I could definitely see that being something that they could sell as being, if not a main event, then right below a main event on a pay-per-view card. And I think they set the basis of that in motion with the elimination at the Royal Rumble. And so whether you take it as far as Sami wins Money in the Bank and cashes in on Jey to set another match in motion somewhere down the road, or they arrive at it in an entirely different way. I think the idea that Jey has no chance, I think is not realistic either. I think they're not going to put that match together, with Gunther and set it up so he just gets demolished again. I think that would be really counterproductive for his long-term success.
And I think, Jake, they went a long ways towards that goal I think tonight they owned the reality and the perception. They owned it, and they turned that into a positive. Everything Gunther said about Jey, you're not a marquee person. If I beat you, it doesn't add to my legacy. That's what people are thinking. So we're going into this from the sort of day one here, thinking they're not delusional about who Jey is. They're not delusional about how he's perceived. And Gunther is saying the thing that the voice in the back of even Jey Uso fans are thinking. So I'm confident that they know what they're working with. You know what I mean? Like, they know what they're starting with. So to tell a really good story, they've already started to own that part of the reality, which makes me think the story coming up the next couple months, if it's Jey and Gunther, and I think it will be, is taking that into account. So I have confidence that they have a plan to address what Jason's saying, what you're saying, Jake.
If you've worked in sales before, Wade, and maybe you have, maybe you haven't. Like,
I feel that way sometimes on this show, but go ahead. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Go ahead.
But I mean, part of doing any kind of sales job, and I haven't done it in 20 years, but if you go through any kind of sales training, it's like, well, you have to understand your product, you have to know its shortcomings, and then you have to overcome obstacles to reach the point where you can get a sale.
Mhm.
And I think that's part of what you just pointed out they're doing right now with
Yep.
Jey Uso. They know what people see as his potential shortcomings. They've laid them out there, and now they have an opportunity to tell you a story over the next, I guess it would be 8 weeks or so, to
Yeah.
try to make you believe that he can overcome all of that and win at WrestleMania. And I think that's a fun story. It at least shows an awareness of who Jey is and how he's perceived that makes you believe that, okay, well, maybe there is a plan here that I'm just not seeing to get him to the point where it's like, yes, he can be a WrestleMania main eventer, defeat Gunther, and feel like it was an earned victory that people are happy about in a general sense. And even if he's that guy who's there for a good time and not for a long time, I think they can make this a success story if they really put their minds to it between now and WrestleMania.
And that's what I'm with Braun Breaker. It was a short-term run, but people enjoyed it. And I mean, I enter into evidence Jey Uso fighting for the IC title, and that might have been like the reason they're doing this is how successful that Jey Breaker match was. And I enter that in evidence, not that it has to always be that way, but why it's the path of least resistance, the obvious thing to do most of the time, the way WWE promotes wrestling, which is there's someone who fans really, really like, and you put him against somebody who fans don't, and the heel knows their job is to not always win, but not undercut the fans cheering that babyface and rooting for them. Gunther gets that, and then not every heel does. A lot of heels think their goal is to they don't overtly think, they just naturally go with in a direction of, ooh, being cheered is fun. I'm an anti-hero, and they undercut the babyface. Gunther knows better than that. There's nothing Gunther does that's trying to get anyone to cheer him, even though people who appreciate the art form of being a heel in wrestling respect him. The people who are buying money and reacting are cheering for Jey wildly in a way that is, to me, peak pro wrestling. And I mean, I go back to the birth of Hulkamania, and I was in crowds where Hulk was trying to beat Nick Bockwinkel for the AWA title, and that crowd was so thirsty for Hogan to beat this arrogant, Beverly Hills snob Nick Bockwinkel. It was amazing. And before that, Vern Gagne, it was the everyman. And so that's what I grew up with. That's the formula that I think is just, why fight it? Just play into it. And Jey is that babyface who just, when you have it, go with it. Because it wasn't that long ago we were saying, will there ever be a babyface who fans just like, who's wholesome and positive and an underdog and not a jerk and not an anti-hero and not trying to be ironic or meta? Jey's just Jey, and people love him. Jake.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I was going to go back to what Jason mentioned earlier. I mean, I don't know if they're going to do some kind of 60 Minutes Dateline NBC man behind the yeet type like news editorial type promo segment, but I think humanizing him as much as possible between now and WrestleMania and contrasting that to the just impenetrable personality of Gunther it's just such an easy thing to do. Like there's a lot to mine there in terms of storytelling, and including some of Jey's personal failures off screen that a lot of people would relate to as well. So there's a lot to dig into with Jey. It's not just the yeet stuff and the call and response. There's a real human there that they can introduce to the audience.
Before I throw back to Jason, whether he stays on this topic or not, 3 quick chat comments I want to throw in. Brock Benningfield said it would be crazy if Jey lost at WrestleMania. Standard Deviation said, I could see one of the nights closing with a wider bloodline cast coming out to celebrate with Jey, similar to when Brett beat Yokozuna, who would fit the Owen Hart role watching on with envy. Sammy, to play into what you're saying, Jake, yeah. And then Sadler Version 3 says, Jey likely wins at WrestleMania, in my opinion. I think WWE wants the Daniel Bryan moment with Jey, where instead of doing the huge crowd, doing the yes chant, they get the yeet chant. And one more comment. Dan just says, the world title isn't as important as the WWE championship that Cody holds, so why not give it to Jey? I think Gunther can recover from a loss. You want to pick him carefully. You don't want to overdo it, because part of what helps Gunther get over isn't just his promos and his good wrestling and his whole the aura. It's that he's really good and destroys most of his opponents. So you got to pick your spots with him. But nevertheless, this might be one of those spots. Jason, back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Jey has to win here. Gunther cannot come out and just blatantly dismiss Jey like this and then end up defeating Jey again. And look, I know this is a loaded thing to say, but if this was real, right, and wrestling was real, the only way Jey would have a chance to defeat Gunther is to show something Gunther he hasn't seen before. Because Gunther's mentioned that he's always in control. He even made that comment, I think Jake alluded to, that Gunther says, I give you all hope, then I take it away. As if to say, I'm always in control, I know what I'm doing. If Jey shows him, and listen, we saw it Saturday night's main event in the ring. Jey hit the spear, he hit the splash, Gunther kicked out of it, and then just finished him off quickly. So, all right, enough of this. I've given you enough hope spots. Now I'm putting the match away. So from a story point of view, if Jey shows something Gunther different that he's not expecting, that's going to give him a chance. Like Sami did in the match with the Brainbusters. So like Jake said, Wade, I see what you're saying, but there is a lot there for them to mine and to take advantage of. And I think they want to get Jey to that next level. And he has to defeat Gunther, but it's going to have to be in a way that Gunther doesn't expect. So Gunther can protect his character too. So I think they've got a win-win situation here. Quickly.
Yep.
Charlotte, I think Charlotte expected to get half cheers and half boos and maybe more boos, and I think she just went with it. And, I think fans are... Look, it's hard for her to get sympathy due to her height and due to her dominance. She's always going to be the heel. I like Charlotte, the Charlotte I saw on Stone Cold's podcast, where she came across very humble, came across very likable. If she was ever going to be a face again, that's the type of Charlotte she has to sort of portray, not this queen type of persona, which gets a bit tired, to be honest with you. And just one final note, with relation to, you haven't talked about this too much, but Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, obviously you can see Kevin throwing against to Sami. You sat there and watched as Cody Rhodes climbed the ladder to win the championship. Why didn't you go and push it over? Why didn't you do that? And Sami could say, but I was tending to you. What do you want me to do? I don't care about that. Like you could see Kevin Owens using Sami Zayn's, he's caring and he's tending to Kevin against him in order to, get revenge on Sami. So they've got a lot to work with here.
The moment of Sami backstage, looking like he was going to resent Jey and then hugging him and saying it's great. They're doing so much with Sami right now. Sami is one of my, the characters who I look forward to watching him play the roles that he has, because he's one of the great performers of what this era demands of what this era of WWE at least demands of wrestlers. And the backstage segments, in-ring promo, the connection with the crowd, him believably being often swayed and pulled and torn in multiple directions and feeling underappreciated or underestimated or taken for granted. I mean, you believe in Sami's inner distress that he's constantly feeling. It's just there, and they play with it so much, I think, effectively. And I think they're telling a really compelling story with him right now. I think there's a danger, Jake, with baby faces who then turn heel and then turn face and then turn heel and turn face. Some people, I think, can get away with it, and because you believe that they stray from who they want to be because they feel underappreciated or whatever. And Sami is in a circumstance right now where we're seeing in real time and experiencing in real time him trying to be a good person, but having Kevin Owens as the voice in the other shoulder pulling him in a bad direction. And then you have some people who are, CM Punk, you're not my league. And I don't know. It's just, there's so many situations that Sami has put in, and he just excels in them. And I'm really looking forward to whatever story they're telling with him. There's clearly an arc here that they have mapped out and know where they're going with it. And all these things we're seeing are going to have a payoff. And whether it's turning heel, maybe Sami cost Jey the match against Gunther at WrestleMania. I don't want interference finishes, but maybe Sami attack. I don't want to. There's all kinds of scenarios that can happen. Jake, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think jealousy is a powerful motivator, and having him watch Jey Uso attain his dream. Sami had a very dramatic promo on Raw not that long ago, talking about how he wanted to be a world champion. I think it was when he was announcing his entrance into the Royal Rumble even. And so watching your best friend or one of your best friends accomplish something in front of you that you've failed to do repeatedly, it has its negative effects on your personality. And I think he's a lot more like Kevin Owens than he likes to believe. And so you're going to see him treat Jey Uso much in the same way that Sami is, or that Kevin has treated him over the years, where there's been these repeated betrayals. And so I think that's it's an interesting thing to mine when they get there. But Sami is one of those characters that succeeds seemingly regardless of what they assign him with. He just manages to turn everything into gold, and I don't think that'll be any different. Oh, you're on mute, Wade.
Yep, thanks. I think there's similarities with Sami and KO, but I think KO is a manipulator and Sami is the one who's being manipulated in most of his interactions with people. And I think that's why those two work together, because Sami can be manipulated by Kevin Owens, and because Sami is manipulated by others and KO manipulates other people. It's a believable story. Ken Arnold says KO versus Sami will be great. It's emotional too because of everything they've accomplished together and separately, and fans being behind both guys for so long. Goodfella 1422 says Sami KO Mania rematch is going to be fire. They'll still figure out how to pull out new spots and ideas. I'm looking forward to it. Jason, back to you.
Yeah. Well, and just one more further thing with that, Sami not being upset with Jey for kicking him, it goes along with his character, because in previous weeks, Sami accidentally kicked Seth, he accidentally kicked Cody, and he said they were accidents, so he had no reason to get upset with Jey. So if him not being upset with Jey buys into his, hey, I can't get upset at you for something that I've been doing. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, but he's also got Karrion Kross in the background too, manipulating.
Where does that go? Is that just a side character, or does that have a payoff?
That's a side character. I think that's a side character, but it's just telling the story, like you said, with this arc, is that there's all these people talking to Sami, like Seth Rollins is talking to him. CM Punk is saying to him, you're not on the level. Now you got Kevin Owens. It's like all these people are like in his ear telling him things, which if Jey Uso wins the title at WrestleMania, you have a Sami Zayn who could just snap due to all these outside voices in his head, to quote Randy Orton, and then you take it from there. But they're clearly telling the story with Sami that sometimes being the nice guy and being the good guy and having everyone's best intentions is not actually the best thing for you. And you can see that's where they're going with that. I'll leave it at that, Wade. Jake, I'll let you get to other people. Take it easy.
Thanks, Jason. Great topics. Always good hearing from you. Jason D from Australia. All right, let's go to Dan up next, and then David is on deck. Dan, welcome. What are your thoughts on Raw tonight?
I wanted to talk about Seth Rollins trying to amp up Sami, and then at the same time, Punk kind of, let me start over. What I really wanted to talk about was Seth didn't get really in trouble for beating the crap out of Roman at the Royal Rumble. Like, I would figure he would get suspended or fined.
That is a good point that I'm critical of when someone does something that feels outside the boundaries. Certainly, I think trying to suffocate someone with a plastic bag or use a screwdriver, unconventional weapons is an issue. But when someone uses brass knuckles or a ring, that's more conventional. Same thing with a kendo stick or a chair. Stomping someone's head on at ringside and then also on the ringside steps falls in the conventional range, but it has been framed in the context of WWE as very extreme and borderline. The idea, and I have an issue with this, like that if WWE knows fans are going to cheer Seth, and a lot of them did, and a lot of them will continue to do so, and that Seth is going to go out there and make his case. Well, Roman did bad things, so I'm going to do bad things. He would have done it to me, so I did it to him. You can make that case, but when things are going so well, and I think a big part of the reason is Roman was a good heel and Sami was a great babyface. Cody was a great babyface against Roman. Cody's a great babyface in general and a great guy, a great character for this time. And now Jey Uso. Why? Like, I know they want to be sophisticated and not follow a certain, pattern of, here the good guys are this and the bad guys are that, but it feels like it's almost you're playing with fire a little bit when Seth is out there being this renegade who is making a somewhat believable argument against CM Punk at times, against Roman Reigns, and justifying this heinous action that is Roman out of action. And I also just feel there should be consistency on the part of the GMs and the announcers, whose baseline role should be, we're here to find out who the best wrestler is, and anything that tilts the playing field or is unfair or out of bounds, we decry, we shame it, we are disgusted by it. And they are selective with it. it feels like what Seth did deserved harsher criticism than just business as usual. Jake, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I'm surprised we didn't hear from from the GM or somebody, or even Michael Cole, talking about how how Seth Rollins had crossed a line, and it was like not only did he stomp him, but he like double foot stomped him on the floor. And Roman is apparently out for some unspecified time. They're trying to sell an injury angle, and Seth just gets to walk out there looking like Michael Hayes fell down a coal mine. There's no consequences to anything he did. He's just all the personality. He gets to say whatever he wants. He gets to instigate again with CM Punk, nearly disrupting the main event, and there's no consequences at all. So I think asking for a little bit of consistency there is a valid criticism.
What are they, just going on what Dan brings up here, what are they doing with Seth? Jake, how would let's say someone hasn't watched the last year of WWE TV, but they know Seth and they're familiar, with the players. They go, what's going on with Seth these days? Like, how would you even summarize what his character is?
I mean, I really don't know what his character is. I think the path that he's on, at least it seems to me, is that he's increasingly coming up short of his own expectations, and it's going to lead to him cracking and becoming completely unhinged and doing some kind of heel turn. I mean, whether it's on Punk or whether it's on Roman or whether it's on both, I think we're going to see Seth Rollins come unglued here, and I think he's been on that path for a while. He continues to try to relate to the audience, but the things he's doing are becoming increasingly unrelatable in terms of his actions, and so I think he has to. That stuff all has to come around eventually, and I think it's going to result in a heel turn, whether it's before or after WrestleMania. I'm not quite sure, but he's definitely on his way there.
Yeah. All right, Dan, back to you.
Yeah, it seems like to me he's actually going down the Drew McIntyre route from last year, where he's like making good points, but he's acting like a heel.
Yeah, I mean, he makes good points. I don't think, he makes them differently than KO, because they're it's just they deliver their material differently. But if you're mad at Seth for what he did because you like the OTC, and then Seth comes out there and goes, "Well, Roman would have done it to me, and he did it to others for years." I mean, the pro wrestling traditionally, when a heel turns babyface, like Roman, the generally they kind of put the stuff they did in the past. Like, there's heinous things Hulk Hogan did during the Nitro years, and they just like pretend it didn't happen when he's a babyface again. There's so many examples of that in history, and I mean, we're going to see that with Hangman Page, and Swerve had to deal with that, when he turned babyface. And it's like, do you acknowledge it, or you just pretend it didn't happen, and you just go, it's wrestling? People just sort of understand, you compartmentalize and move on. WWE's drawing attention to that, and I'm complimentary of Gunther doing it regarding Jey. You're not an opponent who's marquee. You're just like, acknowledge what people are thinking. Don't come across like you're conning the audience or trying to trick them. But with Seth, it's like, do you really want to draw that much attention to the fact that where people start going, why again are we cheering Roman? Like, why did we decide to cheer this guy after all that stuff he did and how he acted, and he was so mean to Sami and so manipulative? It's just like, and he's not around very much. Like, you've got something with Roman. These OTC chants, and I don't think they've gotten the money out of Roman as a babyface yet that they can. And so I don't know that Seth is worth it. As good as Seth is in so many different ways, I don't know that Seth's character is worth undercutting Roman before you get what you can out of him. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think you have to find a way to align them so that they're both pushing each other in the right direction, right? You had Seth attack him in a way that injured him, and so Roman is going to be out for blood, and I think their personal history plays well into this idea that they're not the same people that they were when they were in the Shield, but in a lot of ways they still are. And Rollins, despite all of his insistence to the contrary, is still primarily out for his own self-interest, and he's a bit of a snake, and he attacks people when he's upset, and Roman is still largely the tribal chief. I mean, he's really done nothing different. Like, there's been no change in his demeanor. There's been no change in how he talks about the audience. He's just cool enough that he can get away with being a babyface by doing the same thing he was doing as a heel. And I think eventually that's going to have to change if they ever want him to be, a big draw as a babyface. But it seems like they're just kind of waiting out this Cody situation to see if the bottom ever falls out of it. But thankfully, I guess if you're Cody, you're still as popular as you were a year ago, and that's kind of remarkable, honestly.
Yeah. All right, Dan, back to you.
Is Io Sky a heel or a face? Because I couldn't figure that out today. Because
I think
she had that. Oh, go
I
ahead.
think she's a babyface. I think she was what'd she do that made you think she might be a heel?
Well, I was still going off of like if they were still in that whatever faction it was called. I can't remember with Bailey and all
Damage
the
control,
other. Yeah. Because like I
That's fair.
wasn't paying attention and
they
stopped.
just, I mean, Damage Control's been not well defined. They've just sort of floated around, and it was sort of based on context how we're supposed to feel about him. But I mean, she seemed like regardless of the past, tonight it just felt like, yeah, she's a sympathetic babyface. Jake, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's where they've put her for now. I guess it depends on if Asuka makes a return anytime soon. Though her personal life seems to be in a bit of disarray if her social media is any indication, and I think Kyrie. And so yeah, I think Damage Control has just firmly been placed on the back burner, and she's been pretty much a singles act who has a fairly nebulous character that is generally a baby face, but I don't know that you could even call it a character at this point. She doesn't really have one, unfortunately.
Yeah.
She's just floating around. All right, that's all I had. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dad. Appreciate it. All right, let's bring David Miller into the conversation. David, thanks for holding. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind about Raw tonight?
Well, thanks, Wade. Nice to see you too, Jake. First of all, those last two matches could have headlined any PLE. I was so impressed with those last two matches they had, CM Punk and Sami Zayn. I legitimately did not know how that was going to end, and that was hard-hitting as could be. And I do agree with Dom earlier, though. I do think that Liv and Io stole the show. That was fantastic. Liv Morgan's facial expressions are just priceless. If you look at her facial expressions, her selling is just so spot on. And her and Io are both just so good, and they worked really well together. And I like the nice little touch. Sometimes it's the little things that really make a difference, but I like the touch of when Rhea came for the run-in, no music.
I know.
No music.
That was notable. I mentioned that in my report. My written report, yeah.
Oh, did you? I didn't read your report yet, but that was one thing I noticed. I'm like, okay, that's great. I love that because that's just, I always hated that. That was always a pet peeve of mine. Is the music playing when a running comes in. That just, that shouldn't happen. So I'm glad they did that. But I want to talk more about Charlotte here.
Yeah.
I think she came in, it's like what Dom said earlier, with kind of an inkling that it could go either way. And I think she kind of tested the waters by starting out with a babyface promo. At least that's kind of what it sounded like. But, very, very quickly, like you said, within just a few seconds, I think she caught on. And, she was able to maintain her composure and switch gears. But unlike Gunther and Jey Uso's promo earlier in the night, Charlotte and Rhea did not make me want to see a rematch between the two of them. And I'll tell you why. For one thing, yes, we've been there, done that a few times. Okay, but I really think and she did mention that she's going to NXT tomorrow night, and that she's going to SmackDown on Friday night to see if Tiffany inspires her. That's the matchup. And I thought before she even won the Rumble, because I expected her to win, and before she even won, I thought that the more intriguing matchup would be Charlotte versus Tiffany.
Mm-hmm.
For one thing, there's a lot of fans out there that like to cheer Tiffany.
Yep.
I remember when the last time they were in Australia, the fans were chanting "Tiffy time, Tiffy time." She can be, and if anyone is going to make somebody else a baby face, Charlotte Flair. can make a baby face out of anyone, because she is such a natural heel. And like, everyone said, she should just really embrace this and go with it. I think she could really make Tiffany Stratton as a baby face.
Jake, I'm intrigued by this Charlotte journey. It's interesting that she's making a tour to NXT, but Jey isn't. I mean, I guess we're just being realistic about things, but Charlotte and Tiffany is interesting because it is a fresher matchup. They're trying to sell Rhea Charlotte as like a dream match, and I get it. And within the women's division, as David points out, it can be good or bad. It can seem not fresh, been there, done that. It can also be this is a legacy feud, and it's a passing of the torch type moment, and all of that. But I think most people would be interested, as would I, in Charlotte and Tiffany. But I am concerned with what they're doing with Tiffany, and if they even know what they want to do with Tiffany. She's being a heel, but she's being cheered, and so is part of her character tongue in cheek, and she's sort of in on it, and she's going to use her snark and sass and self-confidence against heels who have it coming. If Charlotte, because I don't even know what WWE would, if they were trying to turn Charlotte babyface tonight, that might have been to prep her for Rhea, that might have been to prep her for Tiffany, but now the crowd rejected her, so now they're like, well, if we put Charlotte against Tiffany, I think David's right, the crowd's going to cheer Tiffany more than Charlotte, and that could derail their actual goal for Tiffany, and it could get in the way of a coherent build to the match and lead to a fallout that they don't want. So unfortunately, Charlotte didn't succeed in what it seemed pretty obviously an attempt to win over booing fans by opening her heart up to them and being sympathetic. But if that was the goal, then why did they air those videos of her on a yacht? And I mean, I'm sorry, but I as a sidebar here, how boneheaded is it to say, we want Charlotte to come out and talk about what a tough year it's been for her after you air videos of her on a yacht and looking in the shape of her life and like living the high life? Like, those are two very contrasting images of somebody. And I really question that. I think those videos were part of what set the stage for fans not buying Charlotte's pity party on the microphone tonight. Jake.
Yeah, I think they've, if I'm Charlotte, and I don't know how much input she has on her own presentation and, the way her demeanor on the air and this whole queen character, but she's, essentially been in and around the world title every second of every run she's had on the main roster. I mean, it's hard to even think of a period longer than a couple of months on the main roster where she wasn't, basically being thrust into the spotlight. I think she came back even her last return from injury, she came back and defeated Ronda Rousey on night one and was the SmackDown Women's Champion. They've never really allowed her to go on a sympathetic babyface journey where she felt like she was fighting uphill. And if there was ever a time to do that, it would have been coming off of, basically tearing her leg off for the most part. She, had to do a complete rebuild on her knee. And so if they wanted her to be a babyface up against a heel Tiffany Stratton, they're fighting a pretty severe uphill battle. And if you're going to turn Tiffany babyface in this process, if that was always the goal, if Charlotte was going to come back and immediately be, the inevitable champion taking on a weaker, somebody who cashed in for a title, that kind of thing, it's going to be a tough sell to make people believe that Tiffany has any chance at all. And if you're going to successfully turn her babyface, does she have to lose at WrestleMania and then go on a long chase to get her title back? Like, I'm just not sure if that's what people want from Charlotte at this point. Clearly, they've resoundingly rejected somebody who just went on one of the craziest rehabilitation periods of her life and came back on night one, won the Royal Rumble, and got booed out of the building. So she's in a tough spot. There's just no other way to put it. And I kind of put that back on WWE Creative for failing to anticipate, how people see Charlotte and how she's been perceived her entire career as being this just hegemon type of character who comes back and just stands atop the division waiting for new competition to come and, possibly push her off the mountaintop. And that's, that worked well when she had an upstart like Becky to work against, but they haven't produced stars that could do that with her for a considerable amount of time. So they're a tough spot with her and Tiffany. Honestly, I hope it works out, but I'm skeptical.
It's a macaronic mess when it comes to Charlotte and Tiffany. I mean, they're both of their characters are just, there's this hodgepodge of conflicting presentations and feelings about them, and I don't know what they want us to think. But by the time you start to get a clue of what they want us to think, you there's this baggage of this conflicting presentation. I mean, Tiffany, let's see, young Blick in the chat said they should just turn Tiffany into a cocky babyface. The fans want to cheer her. Yeah, I mean, I think they got to pick a course, but I think they need to narrow how they feature them. That was always a problem with Charlotte. Is she got the big return pops. Like Ryan Solorio says, I'm surprised Charlotte didn't get the return pop before they turned on her. Crowd liked to woo her. They gave her the star reaction, but she always came across as aloof. She always came across as if she thought, that she was, God's gift to wrestling, and they kind of moved away. I think wisely from the genetic stuff that they were doing with her, but at some point you've got to consistently feature the things that are going to get people to get a certain reaction to these characters, and not look like you're trying to keep people on edge. Oh, do we like Tiffany this week? Or sometimes in one Tiffany promo or week to week, you have reasons to like her and reasons to dislike her. Same with Charlotte. And so I just don't know if that can be saved at this point. I think tonight was supposed to be the attempt to save it, but then why air those videos showing her on a yacht if her idea is, I've had the worst year of my life? And I mean, I don't get it. It's a mess. David, back to you.
Yeah, just got one other point to make, and this is something that's been bothering me. It bothered me when I heard it on the show. It actually bothered me in the Rumble too. They were advertising the Bayley versus Lyra Valkyria match coming up for a spot in the Elimination Chamber. Okay, Lyra is currently the Intercontinental Champion. Okay, I didn't like this in the Rumble either. I don't like it when champions enter the Rumble, and I don't like it when champions enter into something like this for an Elimination Chamber, because to me, when they inevitably lose in the Rumble or in any of these matches, I think it diminishes the prestige of the title that they're currently holding. Yeah. And they just put this Intercontinental title on her. And now she's like saying, well, this doesn't really matter. I want to go for this. And I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Jake, I'm okay with the secondary champions doing anything they can to get the top title. I think there's enough history in Canada, WWE, and the way wrestlers look at things that the IC title and US title are stepping stones in a way. With Lyra Valkyria, it's a jump, it's a leap ahead for her, and it makes sense that she would say, if I can do this, maybe I can do this. So I'm okay with that. I don't want, you don't want it won't even make sense for the world champion to do it. I don't know. How do you feel about that? I'm okay with secondary champions. I disagree with David on this.
Yeah, I think it's everybody who's on the show, secondary champion or not, should covet becoming a world champion. And so when there's an opportunity, whether it's entering a tournament or, the Elimination Chamber, or, I guess even Money in the Bank, if you want, it seems like it would be everybody is going to want to take advantage of that opportunity. I mean, it would make them seem silly if they said, I'll pass, let me defend my title on this show. That part of it would, I think I'll be having a discussion about how that seems illogical as well. And so, it doesn't bother me so much. I guess it does reduce the prestige of those titles if you have them repeatedly fail every time they step up to the plate to go for the bigger championship. And I think you have to be careful about, how you define the secondary champion, so that they don't feel like there's this gigantic leap between the title they hold and the world championship. But I just on a case-by-case basis, I guess you just have to evaluate those things.
David, anything else for us?
No, I'm good, guys. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, great. Thanks, David. Good hearing from you.
Thank you. David.
Some chat room comments. I think maybe Triple H thought Charlotte would get the same reaction he did when he came back and won the Rumble. Goodfella 1422 says, yeah, the yacht vignettes didn't help for sympathy. LOL. Good shout. Sadler Version 3 says, I didn't care about the Charlotte return promos until Wade mentioned it. It's dumb that they ran with the snobby rich promos instead of a motivational workout rehab promo like Triple H when he tore his quad. I'd say like Seth Rollins, 8 years ago or whatever, when he was making his comeback and then they didn't go with him as a babyface. But yeah. So anyway, Jake, anything you want to add to the topics that are floating out there? Otherwise, I'm going to go to some emails here.
No, I'm ready for some emails. That sounds good.
Cool. All right. So, Standard Deviation, who's in the chat, but emails are a good way to be able to elaborate a little bit more than you can in the chat. He said, hi, Wade. I hope you and Jake are well. Topic A, Jay's entrance. On the surface, Jay's overness appears to stem from a shallow catchphrase and flashy entrance. However, I believe his crowd reactions are a direct product of 5 years of meticulous storytelling. Many other crowd participation gimmicks, such as LA Knight's "Yeah," are cookie cutter and could theoretically be copy and pasted to other wrestlers. However, the mimetic yeet is specific to Jay's character and emerged from his evolving story in front of the live crowd. Jay's ostensibly superficial entrance represents the fruits of bloodline storytelling labor. Topic B relates to that. Charlotte's robotic facade contrasts with Jay's vulnerability. While Jey exudes vulnerability by owning his performance anxiety, Charlotte attempts to mask hers with plastic overconfidence. Her insecurities would be less off-putting if she didn't try to hide them under her new face. Everything about Charlotte screams fake. No yeet. Keep up the excellent work. Go VIP. Fascinating contrast that Standard Deviation points out here, Jake, between the two characters. Your thoughts on the way he framed that?
No, I think that's accurate. I think there is something naturally charismatic about Jey Uso, and I think he's made that connection with fans, over the course of telling a multi-year story, where people got invested in him breaking free of being Roman's yes man and sort of staking out, his claim as being his own man. And, the yeet catchphrase might have been, a foot in the door, so to speak. And it's certainly a fun call and response part of his entrance. But I think it's just emblematic of the energy that he's bringing to his character. He's a sort of a fun-loving everyman who likes to engage with his fans and be a man of the people. He comes in through the crowd. He's leading them in the chants and in the dance. And so I think it's, comparing that to Charlotte, it's like, she's like a T-1000 Terminator in comparison. She feels like a very, I guess, sanitized version of a WWE character. And it's something that's followed her around for her entire career. And it's very bizarre when you see her do interviews out of character, when she's not that person at all. Like, where is that humanity on screen? Like, I think that's the crazy part of it to me.
It is. I mean, the Charlotte who talks like this and says queen all the time, may, in those vignettes, make her feel like, oh, she's a star above everybody else. But I also think, while she's been gone, people have fallen in love with other people who they perceive as top stars now. Tiffany is the shiny new toy, and a more compelling character, even if it still feels a little jumbled in terms of who she is and what they want, who she thinks she is and who she wants us to believe she is. And then Rhea, the average WWE fan sees Rhea as a bigger star now than Charlotte. I think. I mean, there's some exceptions for sure, but I think the average fan, the majority, think Rhea's a bigger star than Charlotte, and that might bother Charlotte. It might not. She's got her money. She's got, there's other things in life probably bothering her more. But it's nice to show up and have your career back on track after you're gone for over a year. And it's not, and this does seem like there's a need for a little recalibration of her. And I think tonight's promo was the goal, the idea. The smart people behind the scenes in Charlotte were like, how can we let people know I'm different now, and I'm going to open up. I'm going to be emotionally accessible. I'm not going to talk like the robot doing this thing and refer to myself as a queen and all that. I'm going to be a person, a vulnerable person, and fans will side with me. But it's too much like Jey, and Jey has been on a journey in front of us in real time. Charlotte was not on a journey with us in real time. This was jarring. This was just unexpected, inexplicable change in how she was presented the last couple of weeks in the vignettes, and her ostentatious, some would say gaudy ring outfits, and her new look overall. It didn't set us up for this. It didn't set us up to go, oh, now I feel for her as a human being who's had a tough year and doubted herself. Yeah. Jake, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe this is hoping against hope or unreasonable, but like setting Charlotte up to go on some kind of journey where she has her ego shattered and then has to start from the ground up and build herself back up again would be fun, just because we've never seen her at a low point where it felt like she couldn't do anything right, or where she was emotionally vulnerable on screen to the point where she couldn't explain her own failures. I think that's, and you don't necessarily need to go, way down in the dumps like bum ass Baron Corbin or something silly like that. But I mean, there's definitely a more human side to Charlotte Flair that we've never seen on screen that I think is a much more true representation of who she is. And I think that's like part of the reason that I think, you mentioned Rhea Ripley being as popular as she is, and people being drawn to her, is because you feel like the character she's playing on screen is an extension of herself. And I don't feel that about Charlotte Flair at all in the slightest.
Or if you do, it's totally incongruent with her being a babyface.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's one or the other. She's inauthentic, or she's authentically not a babyface. I think that's how the crowd is split. But they felt she was a big star, and now she's not the biggest star.
Yeah, no, that's perfectly fair. And I think, Jey Uso has been basically on the journey that I hope they go with. Yes, bum ass Corbin was excellent. That I hope they go on with Charlotte, where it's like he gets broken down and he put himself back together, and he found a way to connect with people, and now he's back. He's practically, in a WrestleMania main eventer. So that's a good, and the same thing can be said for Bianca Belair too, who feels like she's been, on a train to nowhere for a year now, and so we need some of those reboots for these major characters who feel like they've gotten a bit stale and overwrought.
Yep. All right. JB from Detroit says, how is the Chad Gable Otis commercial still running? I don't know. 2, is Gunther saying that beating Jey at WrestleMania doesn't add anything to his legacy really productive? I was also under the impression that a heel's role is to talk up their opponent while simultaneously being arrogant about how they're just that much better. Gunther is typically a master of this. So that's the counter to my argument, which is have Gunther say what people are thinking. You already beat him at Saturday's main event. I'm not going to build my legacy beating you. You're the lackey in the bloodline. You're a tag team wrestler. You're insecure. You're very popular because of your catchphrase and your dance, but you're not a true top-tier guy. Your biggest win was undone 3 weeks later. But you can make the argument, is it too believable? But to me, if Jey wins the Rumble, you have to tell a story that resonates as credible with people. And that story is owning that Gunther's attitude would be, you're beneath me. I don't feel that is dressing down Jey in the way that we're normally critical of when a heel does that to a babyface. Jake.
Yeah, I would say that it's not really about, the WrestleMania main event, if the story plays out like they laid out tonight, is not really about Gunther's legacy at all. It's about creating a legacy for Jey Uso. And so the idea of Gunther pointing out that, defeating you does nothing for me is accurate, but it does everything for Jey Uso if he can defeat Gunther. And I think that has to be, the story. And they laid it out in pretty simple terms that, in order for this to be interesting for Gunther, he has to make Jey's life a living hell for 8 weeks. And how Jey perseveres through that and finds his way, towards a victory at WrestleMania is going to determine whether or not he's probably a long-term success as a babyface champion.
Up next, it feels like Bayley is watching Raw from the crowd every other week. I like wrestlers in the crowd, and I mean they're all there for Rumble weekend. They're not going to fly people out if they're not going to be part of the show most of the time. But I thought it was fine, especially in promoting next week's show. I thought they did a good job making it seem like these qualification matches are a big deal, and hyping them. They're really playing up Bayley as like they're giving her the lip service of this legendary star, even if her record and coming up short has been the rule for her lately, Jake.
Yeah, no, she's kind of in that legacy star category at this point. You know, she's been around for 10 years, and she's been successful, and she's won WrestleMania main events just last year. And so I think they're going to, you know, they're going to treat her with a level of respect that's fitting for, you know, for her contributions. But I guess you know, she feels pretty ice cold to me as a character. I mean, I wish I could say really nice things about how she's been presented recently, but I think she's getting more of that, you know, that legacy reaction where we, you know, you have star power and you've had staying power, but you're just not doing anything really interesting at the moment, unfortunately.
And I just don't know her character. You know, what is she? She's just Bayley, the legacy star who's done a lot. I don't feel I have a sense of like how she's not coping. Coping's overstating, but how she's processing her place in wrestling at this moment and what she's been through. It just sort of feels like she shows up, she's Bayley, she's good, but yeah, and honestly, I mean, her push is reflective of, I think, how fans perceive her. We like her, she's paid her dues, she's got a good track record, but it's not passionate, it's not top level. She's clearly, you know, sort of bottom of the top tier at this point. Whatever the top tier is, she's at the bottom of it, but she's still a top tier wrestler because of her history and track record. JB says the crowd seemed dead for the New Day LWO match, particularly for the Logan Paul interference. Is it possible Paul takes the air out of the audience in a negative way? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it seemed like he got booed and the crowd didn't like that, but I think people just saw the match as they were suspicious at the beginning, and it was revealed to be true that the match was just a vehicle to get to something else, which is building up the Ray Logan match. But I mean, I thought it was fine. I mean, it's part of a 2.5-hour show, and I think it served its purpose.
Yeah, no, I think that's an accurate statement. I mean, they were cold because there wasn't really a lot to be excited about. It just kind of felt like mostly like a throwaway match. You know, and I think, you know, the live. The person who was there said it felt like a bathroom break match, and unfortunately, that's kind of what it felt like to me too. Where it was there to bridge to you know, another part of the story, and that match wasn't really an important part of the overall structure of what they were doing with that segment. So it was fine for what it was. I think the New Day are onto something. I like the fact that they actually got heel music. That's a nice precedent to set.
Yes,
that they didn't come out to the same old. You know, babyface track that they always had,
or
and
a
so
Shinsuke remix. You know, we're gonna slow it down.
So I'm optimistic about where they can go with those characters, but they have to strike while the iron is hot. I think the longer they wait, the harder it's going to be to really move them into contention for those tag titles.
Yeah. Also, JB says, at this point, can Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn ever be face friends again? They've had so many turns on each other. Either one of them would look stupid if they aligned in the future. I kind of disagree. I mean, I just think their relationship's complicated, but there's just, you know, it's like you earn respect. What the line was used by someone tonight. You know, you earn respect when you go to war with someone, and obviously, whatever friendship they portray on air should be in the context of, you know, Kevin Owens turning on Sami and manipulating him, and you have to take that into account, or Sami will look like a dope and a pushover, and naive. But I think they can account for that because they're just such great performers, and there's a bond with them that goes so far back that predates all of this, that I think fans are willing to buy that ultimately they still have enough in common to be brought together again. Jake?
Yeah, no, I think it's, you know, they're brothers. You know, like they're going to go through periods where they're the best of friends, and then they're going to go through periods where they're enemies. I think that's just part of who they are as people, and they never really fully abandon one another. It's just they go on stretches of time where it's like, I want nothing to do with you right now. And I think that's, I mean, you know, it's obviously not everybody's relationship, but there's certainly, you know, a precedent for it in fiction where people drift apart and come back together and do so
For sure.
over long stretches. So I think that's perfectly normal. There's going to be a point in time where Kevin and Sami come together again and people enjoy it. And I don't know if it's going to be in the next couple of years, but I would never write it off, because you can never quite tell when these things will cycle in and out of being fun again.
Yeah. Sometimes people are different, but there's a bond that brings them together. The movie A Real Pain with Kieran Culkin, that's getting some buzz right now. It's like, cousins who as kids got along, and then you grow apart, and then but there's still that history there that brings you together for certain things. And I think KO and Sami are like that. Finally, JB says, will Chad Gable learning the art of the luchador turn him face again? As always, love the show, and everyone go VIP. Jake, I don't know where do you know where the Gable thing is going? I hope have there been spoilers I haven't known, because I don't want to repeat them, but I don't know where they're going with this. I'm intrigued.
Yeah, I don't really have a great idea either. It's he's going on a journey to learn the dark art of lucha libre, I think is what he said tonight. Whether that turns into comedy or whether it turns into something serious, I don't have any idea. But I think the idea is that he's going to be feuding with Rey or Penta or both, or some combination of the luchadors on the show. And I think it's just kind of a fun undercard gimmick. I think it works fine for a guy like Chad Gable, who is probably not going to be even in the secondary title picture very often, but he still seemingly finds a way to get TV time and has interesting characters work to do. So it works for him.
There's part of me that thinks Gable is going to show up, and it's going to be Otis in an elaborate lucha outfit where all the fans know it's Otis, but the outfit and the setting will be just masked enough where we could believe Gable wouldn't know and he's being fooled. To me, that feels like a potential payoff to this, where the fans are just laughing at Gable and Gable so badly wants to believe. But, well, yeah. We'll see. What I want to know is what's going on. This is tangentially related. What's going on with Dom and Liv? Are they breaking up? Is Liv manipulating Dom? Are they sticking together for the long haul? Is Liv the heel? Is Dom the heel? Like what's going on with them, Jake?
I think Liv is going to remain the heel, but I think I don't really see any reason why you would turn Dom babyface, and so I think they're just going to end up fracturing at some point. It doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of mileage left to get out of them as a pairing. And I mean, Raquel doesn't add a whole lot to that either. It really doesn't feel like as a heater, she's been all that successful. But I think ultimately the Judgment Day just has to end up going their separate ways, because they've gotten way more mileage out of that group than anybody could have ever anticipated. But I think it's run out of runway at this point.
I didn't think Liv would be the master manipulator, and I'd buy it. But the way she's like, oh, Finn, Dom got you your qualifying match. And, oh, Finn, we're going to start listening to you from now on. And Finn's like, oh, good. Like buying that Liv is genuinely going to listen to him now. Like, she's turned out to be like the smartest person in the room, which if you're dealing with JD McDonough and Carlito, I believe it. But I didn't think with Finn and Dom that'd be the case. But I mean, Liv is doing really well in this role. Yes. I mean, she's well past just, shaking her chest and coming out and looking lost as a character and doing these weird mannerisms and laughs. Like, she's sinking her teeth into this role and doing a good job with it. And she deserves credit for that. WWE stuck with her, and she's in a role where I don't know where it's going, but I enjoy her segments. And you
have to call her one of the MVPs of the division last year. I mean, it wasn't a great year for the WWE Women's Division, but I think she really grew into her own as a character. She's found something, and I hope they don't completely upset the apple cart with her. I think she could work well as a heel on her own if they want to keep her and Raquel together. I don't see much of a future in Judgment Day. I think it's running on fumes at this point.
Yep. We're going to go to Sean Plichta from Tennessee in a second. I do want to just throw the graphic up on the screen. If you're still with us 2+ hours into our discussion, you are a good candidate to be a PWTorch VIP member. And we are running our first sale on YouTube since we've started doing our live post shows on YouTube. And that is a $10 discount on a 1-month, 3-month, or annual sub. Just show some support for what we're doing here. If you enjoy what we do, it's an ad-free website. It's a weekly newsletter with exclusive content, Greg Parks' columns. It's are, as you can see on the collage on the screen, if you're looking at us on YouTube, a whole variety of VIP exclusive audio shows, the Wade Keller Hotlines covering insider news, my reviews start to finish of Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, just to catch you up on shows in case you don't watch them or you want to hear my thoughts on everything. Our post pay-per-view roundtables, Greg Parks Out Loud, on and on and on. And then back issues of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter dating back 35 plus years. We've got a QR code on the screen. So if you're watching us on your laptop or TV, you can point your phone at that, get right to the sign up page, and choose 1 month, 3 month, or annual, and enter coupon code 2025 SAVE 10. 2025 SAVE 10. And you'll get $10 off. We appreciate your support. Give us a chance to earn your business. Try us at least for a month, and I think you'll like what you receive. And as I mentioned earlier, that Royal Rumble podcast feed and kind of headquarter page where you can on-demand stream or sign up to an RSS feed with our post-Rumble roundtables dating back to 2004. In and of itself, I think is worth taking the plunge and trying a VIP membership. All right, let's go to Sean to wrap up our show here. Sean, we won't go too long with you because we're running late. We're running long, but I want to get your thoughts on Raw tonight.
Well, I just wanted to get on number one because I'll probably never get on Raw for a long time. So I was like, I'm home for a little bit. Let me get in real quick. I know you guys have talked about a lot of stuff. I'll just share a couple of my thoughts.
Yeah.
First of all, go VIP, everybody. I mean, you don't really even need the sale. I'm glad Wade's doing a sale. I know he doesn't do them very often, but go VIP, people. Like it's just, you're not going to waste any. I mean, it's just awesome. All the content, all the good stuff he does. I thank Wade for what he does. Jake, good to talk to you. I know you and Jason do a great job at .net. I mean, become a .net member. You just have to do it. So my thought was, as far as the Charlotte promo, I know you guys have already talked about it, but just from my perspective, it kind of hurt me in a way because this is the first time I felt Charlotte was actually trying to be a real person, and they just dogged on her, and and I was like, I was kind of mad at the fans at first. Like, come on, guys, like give her a chance to actually, she's trying to do what you want her to do, and now you're just crapping all over her. But then I thought she turned it heel in a really cool way. She's like, boo me, cheer me, whatever. I'm the best. And so I'm assuming they're just going heel. I guess that's what they're doing. And it's fine because she's a better heel, obviously. But it makes me want to see Charlotte and Rhea. I was not a fan of doing it again because we've already seen it a couple of times. And they hadn't really told the story very well a couple of years ago, building up to their match. But now I'm ready. If they do a third one, I'm all in. Let's go. Let's do some good promo. Charlotte is a great heel. Rhea is a great face. Let's do it. So I guess that's where I was. I thought Charlotte ended up doing okay. If it's just official, she's a heel now. But I was kind of mad at the fans. Were you kind of with me when you watched it? You're kind of like, man, let her be real for once. Or were you just like, it's fine. Let her kind of sink her. Let's let her figure it out.
I think Charlotte earned what she got tonight. I think WWE earned what they got tonight. Those vignettes last 2 weeks we talked about them. She's on a yacht. She's a star. She's on wearing these ostentatious, expensive, arguably gaudy robes. She's full of herself, and she's walking out. And in the did you see the Q&A after the Rumble, Jake, or on how Charlotte came across? Did you watch that, Jake?
I've not gone back to watch it, so I can't.
Yeah, somebody just said she just seems sort of like not all that invested in being there in the moment. I heard
that too.
Yeah, so I need to watch. I need to watch that part of it. So I don't know. I think she kind of earned what she got tonight, and I think there's some work to be done. I mean, that's and we talked a lot about it, Sean, earlier in the show. But yeah, you don't. To show her on a yacht and she's wearing these great robes, and then she comes out and goes, yeah, I've had the roughest year of my life. Please have sympathy for me. I'm a real person. And it's totally against everything she's ever portrayed herself as. Fans need to adjust to that. And frankly, they like Rhea better. And she's not going to be able to change that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then I wanted to say during when Ray and Dragon Lee were going up against the New Day, and then, I love Ray, but it drives me crazy when Logan's music comes out. Don't sit there and stare at Logan Paul the whole time. Like, I just wish faces would stop doing that. I understand the music's coming, but just let other referees or let somebody else handle it. They're supposed to be doing their job to not let them interfere, just focus on what you're trying to do, win a match. So that kind of drove me. But going back to Jay real quick, I know obviously we talked all about it. I'll go back and listen, but I just want to give my 2 cents on it. I'm still, with Todd. I'm still with the side of, I'm not a Jey main event guy person. I don't know if he's the right person. I thought it was a cool surprise. I thought it was fine, but I thought tonight was a step in the right direction. I think if we're going with Jey and Gunther, I think it was cool seeing Jey be genuinely emotional. That was a cool moment. I did enjoy that. I did enjoy he was like opening himself up to everyone, saying this is the journey I've kind of been on. I'm ready to do this. And Gunther, I thought his promo was just fantastic. Just, just getting into him, just digging into him. If you pick me again, I'm going to make you pay for it. And it's not going to be pretty. And Jey coming back at him at the end. I just thought if we're going that route, it's okay. I'm still leery of, even if Jey does beat Gunther, where they go after that. Like I said, his matches are still very, very weak, most of them. Not that that's everything. Obviously, it's promos, it's pop, everything. But I thought tonight was at least a step in the right direction. So those were kind of the main thoughts.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the whole show, so that's kind of what I had, and wanted to just bring that out there and see if you had anything that you haven't already talked about earlier.
Your thoughts on Gunther and Jey are similar to ours, especially Gunther being fantastic. And just, so I'm concerned about, Jey, if you I haven't come up with a perfect babyface who won the title. I know there's examples, Jake, of a babyface who won a major title and then they just weren't ready for it. Like, a underdog champion. And I'll put some thought into it. Maybe I'll cover it on the flagship tomorrow if it comes to me. Does anyone come to mind, Jake, of where, I don't want to pull the Ron Garvin thing out from like the late 80s when he beat Flair.
That was a long time ago.
That was a long, well, yeah. I don't mind going back a long time because I think, WWE's getting people excited and interested in wrestling history. But Ron Garvin was a underdog babyface who wasn't top tier and he wasn't seen as a top guy. And they, for all kinds of reasons that we could talk at length about, went with him, and it just didn't work. People didn't want to see Ron Garvin headlining. His matches weren't good enough and he wasn't charismatic enough, but Ron didn't have the responses that Jey Uso got. He nowhere close. But I'm wondering if there's an example out there, territory days all the way through 90s attitude, where just somebody was really popular, but they weren't popular in that way. Fans didn't want to see them close out an event.
I think Sting's first title win is probably the closest thing I can think of. Where he got the big win over Flair. It was a major deal, and then they just didn't draw, And so I don't know if it's perfectly analogous, but certainly there have been a number of guys who had that veneer of popularity and got major reactions, and then once you task them with selling out arenas and carrying a company, that it just didn't quite pan out for one reason or another. And it may have been that they were set up for failure, or it may have been just that the crowd wasn't ready for it at the time. But I think it shouldn't completely deter you from trying.
Right.
It's like you're going to swing and miss sometimes. And I think it's worth it with Jey because they have so many other things going on. That if you manage to even hit a triple with Jey Uso, you've done something special.
And if it flops, it's like, well, we got these 6 other matches people passionately care about and are going to pay top dollar to see. Yeah, and with Sting, it was like they saw him as a future. Everybody saw him as like, oh, he might be the future star. It just turned out his matches were dull and his promos weren't refined, and he was great against Flair, and then there was a huge drop off, like with a lot of people, when he wasn't, because Flair was in his prime at that point. Jay's different. He's late in his career, long time. It'd be like if Bret Hart just turned out to be really boring after he won the title, after going from tag team to IC to champ. But people liked Bret, and so I don't know. Yeah, and Bret was younger at that point, so maybe there's not a perfect analogy out there. But Sean brings up a good point, which is if they go with Jey, and they don't run house shows. Who cares if Jey can't wrestle? He doesn't have to be in the main event of pay-per-views. He can be in a match where people cheer him, and he's in an above average match that's not great, and then you close with Cody, or you close with Rhea or whatever, and they'll be fine. That's the thing. They have so much depth right now. Sean, anything else quick you want to bring up? I know you said you didn't see all the show, so.
Yeah, no, and I just want to say, going back to on Saturday. It was like the only, like I said, it was great when it was Jey and Cena the final two. Obviously, I'm like, I want Jey to win because I just the thought of Cena winning the Royal Rumble was disgusting. He was awful in that Rumble. I was embarrassed for him. I was embarrassed that I have to watch this farewell tour. I don't want to see this farewell tour. I wish it would go away. I don't care. I know a lot of people do. I'm not. I mean, people can do it. Be into it. It's not for me. He looked. Johnny on Jason's show today just said he needs to do some kind of tanning or not Adam Cole tan, but some kind of tan because he was as pale as could be, and it just looked rough. So no, guys, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on real quick, and I'll be on. Hopefully, be on again soon.
All right, cool. Thanks. Have a good week. By the way, Ryan, just on this, Ryan Solorio says you can't make a new main eventer if you don't put someone new in the main event. The thing is this is not an attempt to create a new main eventer. This is just to tell a Jey Uso story that happens to have Gunther in the world title and the Rumble involved in it. They don't need a new main eventer. They don't need a guy almost 40 years old who's not a great wrestler and doesn't have a great future. This, like, Gunther's at the beginning of his WWE journey. He's not that much younger than Jey, but this isn't about creating a main eventer. That's just about getting something out of Jey while you can. And I've advocated for that for a long time. I mean, there's been moments in time where wrestlers, Zack Ryder was brought up earlier, and like where you just don't talk about the reasons not to do it. If the fans are behind him, do it. So I don't know.
I think you and I have, I mean, I've listened to you for many years, and I've said the same thing over the years as well, where it's, they've always been poor at picking up on waves and riding them while they were there.
Like Titus O'Neil could have had 3 hot months. That's all he had in him, but they didn't get it out of him. They didn't even get the 3 months out of him that there was to be had.
And so often they would, and largely this was Vince McMahon and his single-mindedness, but they would fail to see something in someone while they were hot, and then they would fight it, and then by the time they actually got around to doing something with them, it had already gone past, and there was nothing left to get out of it. And so I find it hard to fault them for trying to strike while the iron is hot with Jey. Yeah. And if they only get 3 to 6 months out of it, so be it.
And don't hold this to the standard of, if Jey isn't a main eventer 2 years from now, this was a bad idea. The idea is, can we get 6 more months out of Jey and at a higher level than anyone imagined? And does that allow us to delay something else that we would have had to go with now? And that gives us something to work with for SummerSlam and WrestleMania next year that we thought we'd have had to spend. And instead we get to go with Jey. And that's why I say we have to see what they do with Roman and Punk and everybody else, Cody and Cena. Let's see what they do before we feel fully qualified to evaluate this Jimmy decision. Okay, Jake, John Cena. Sean brought him up. Yeah. Some comments in the chat. Sadler version 3 said Cena's post-show promo is great. It makes me hopeful he will be serious. There's still part of John Cena's act that even that post-show Q&A, and I don't know. There's just a, I don't know. I don't even know what the right word is. This goofiness and inauthenticity with this veneer of trying to be serious. I don't buy, but and also the idea of, well, I'm inserting myself in the chamber because I believe I've earned that stature. I get it. I guess I'd rather have Cena go, I want to qualify for the chamber, and I'd rather have like Paul Levesque or Adam Pearce whisper in his ear, oh, you don't need to qualify. You're John Cena. Like, have someone else declare that, not him. I would have gone with it. I would have suggested that as an augmentation. But yeah, Jake, you said you had something to say about Cena. Let's hear it.
Well, I mean, they essentially have one carrot that they can dangle in front of John Cena for the next year, and that's breaking the record for, the 16. He'd become a 17-time world champion. And I keep seeing people pointing to, like, well, he's going to win at the Chamber to get his WrestleMania match, or, whatever the case may be. And I don't think you pay that off right away. I mean, I wouldn't even give him a title shot until SummerSlam. Like, I think you have to, like, that has to be the one of the final things he does in the company before he drops the title and elevates somebody else to that next level. But I find it hard to think that there's so many people who are already etching him into a title match at WrestleMania. Like, he needs to, he needs to start that journey there. I think
what is that right opponent? If it's not earning a match at the Chamber and choosing Cody or Gunther, depending on what they do with Jey. What is the match for him?
At WrestleMania?
Yeah, at WrestleMania. If he doesn't,
Logan Paul.
Okay. Yep. Yeah.
I mean, I think there has to be, a process for him to earn his way back to becoming a world champion. Like he hasn't. I mean, he made a big point out of saying, in his return promo that he hasn't won a match in something like 2,000 days or whatever. To think that he's going to just show up at the Royal Rumble and win, or show up at the Elimination Chamber and win. I think you have to. You talked about this false humility that he gives off sometimes. I think the process of telling the story of him earning a 17th title win has to be him, having that hubris sort of shattered and forcing him to do the work to actually win that title. And whether it's clawing his way into Money in the Bank or earning it some other way down the road on the way to SummerSlam or Survivor Series or wherever they finally pulled the trigger. I don't think you start out with a one goal and then pay it off in April. I think that's really bizarre for a final year in the company.
Yeah, it's against the Cena brand to accept a leapfrogging into the chamber match after his opening promo was, I haven't won, I don't deserve it, it would be unrealistic for me to expect it. The fans cheer and go do it anyway. And suddenly he's like, I'm going to do it. And then the false humility is, well, I'm not doing it for me. Not that he's going to say he's doing it for the fans, but he goes, I'm doing it for the person who breaks my record so I can shake their hand. And it's like, that's just a little too much. Like just say, I want to end my career as world champion. And a lot of fans apparently do too. And I don't know if I can do it, but I got some fight left in me and I'm going to give it all I've got. And instead he showed up in the Netflix special and he showed up at the Rumble. He hasn't shown up in person since. And now he gets a bye in the first round of the Elimination Chamber. I mean, if you're going to do a retirement tour and they make a big deal out of it and they hype it, show up for work. That's his character. He's not going to gain momentum, not being a part-time guy, but just being showing up once a month. And that means by not qualifying means he might not show up on TV till the Chamber. This isn't a retirement tour. This is like something else. It's something other than that. and it doesn't fit. So I thought he was going to be on 3 out of 4 weeks on Netflix, and not that that's even a good thing, because I think a little bit of John Cena goes a long way, and maybe they're self-aware of that, but there is a downside to just airing a press conference clip and him being at the Rumble and Netflix. It's like, why only show up for the really big shows? I don't know. Is it really worth giving him all this attention then?
Yeah, there's something about John Cena where like he talks about entering the Elimination Chamber like he's stopping by the bank to sign for a loan, or he's just there's a lack of enthusiasm about it that you wouldn't expect for a guy who's on a farewell tour, who had one of the most historic careers in pro wrestling history. Like I think he has to find, I don't know if it's humility or sincerity or something along those lines, but he does have that is a lot of the same issues that we talk about with Charlotte, where he feels like he's on another plane of existence, and then he just he allows us to participate in his life when he gets around to it. But I hope there's something there for him. I was not a huge Cena fan at the outset, and he really earned my respect over the years. And I wouldn't want my last taste of John Cena to be this guy who feels like he's moved past wrestling and he's now coming back just to feel like he can be a part of it again. That's not who he was.
No, that's exactly it. And you were kind of searching for like a term or how to frame it. Like he needs to. What made Cena work is his heart was in it. He was all in. That was his character. Was my heart is in it. I'm all in. He was devoted to Vince McMahon. He was devoted to WWE. He was devoted to the WWE universe and all the corporate speak and being on the grind and having fresh merchandise all the time and making all the appearances and doing the charity. He was in it all the way. And then there's sort of that Baron Corbin SummerSlam match where it's like he kind of seems over it now. Like suddenly it's like. And it's like, did he just wake up one day going, well, this is fun. I'm ready for the next chapter. And I got these opportunities and it like clicked with him. I don't have to pack my bags and go to airports all the time. I can be a movie star and a TV or what did it start? Did it just get difficult? Like, but whatever it is, it just doesn't seem like his heart's in it. It seems like he's showing up almost out of a duty to not be what he said Rock was when his heart was in it, when he was all in. And I don't think John Cena faking it. Some would say he was faking it all the time in a certain way, or kind of came across phony all the time. I just think he's just sort of a goofy and awkward in certain ways. But I think his heart was genuinely like in it. I don't think that was a marketing gimmick. It had to be for his schedule. Now it just feels like he's showing up because he's a legend and that's what legends do. And he's quote unquote giving back. But how? Like showing up at the Netflix special and then cutting a promo saying I'm not any good. And then the fans go, but you are. And he goes, okay, I guess I am. I don't know. That's not enough. I don't think that's enough for me. And I don't think he's building momentum. I think it's more of a distraction at this point. They got 2 months though. I mean, there's time.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm not going to say that he can't find his mojo, so to speak. I just, it's hard to get past the idea that, that he feels he's like, he's slumming it a little bit, where he's like, I have this Hollywood career now, and I don't need this, but I'm doing it for you. And it's like this false sense of humility where you're just like, oh, thanks, buddy. You're really doing me a favor,
Yeah.
And so I hope that he's able to get, find a little bit of passion here on his way to WrestleMania, because that's, it'll be his last one, and hopefully that stirs up some emotions.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Jake, anything else you want to add? Any segment on the show or any thoughts we didn't cover?
No, I'm good. Thank you for having me, of course.
Thanks for being on. So just a final reminder, we'll put it up on the screen for our YouTube viewers. You can take your phone out, hit the QR code. Now's a good time to do it. If you made it to this part of the show, I think you are a good candidate to enjoy VIP membership. PWTorch.com/GoVIP. Coupon code 2025 save 10. 2025 save 10 is a coupon code. That takes $10 off a 1 month, 3 month, or annual subscription. You can just type in the website PWTorch.com/GoVIP, or scan the QR code on the screen with your phone. That'll take you right up to the sign up page. It is a slick, smooth process to sign up. And that includes a confirmation email that has a link in it, which will automatically sign you up. No advanced settings, no password to enter to on Apple Podcasts. And you can also then customize your feed for only current events, or just nostalgia, or a split feed, or a catch-all feed. You can also subscribe to individual shows. We have a really slick setup when you go have a full VIP membership. I have on my phone like 15 different podcast feeds set up from the Torch for all the different shows and the groupings, because that's how I listen to the shows that I'm not part of. And it's nice once you set it up to stay organized. So tons of content. And I think you'll enjoy, if you're a student of history, our 18 years ago VIP vault that we put up almost every day, a show from 18 years ago that week, with some really cool content running through the year now, 2007, and on demand, hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, all kinds of cool stuff. Just check it out. Full details at pwtorch.com/govip. Coupon code 2025 save 10. Thanks to Jake Barnett. Check out his work at prowrestling.net. Check out our coverage of wrestling and our flashback articles, our live TV and pay-per-view coverage, our editorials, our special features, and more at pwtorch.com. And check out the Blue Logo Show tomorrow. Search Wade Keller in your podcast app and subscribe if you haven't yet to get our Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast, including tomorrow's flagship. We have a lot more to talk about. And I am about to go record the Wade Keller hotline for VIP members, where I run down Raw start to finish. So if there's a topic we didn't cover here, I will certainly cover it running down the show and give my thoughts on it. And if you didn't see Raw start to finish, because you can't necessarily see all the wrestling shows, it's another perk of VIP membership. The Wade Keller hotline features my start to finish rundown in roughly 20 minutes of these 2 and 3 hour shows, Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown throughout the week. Thanks again, everybody. And we will talk to you all next time.